today is Wednesday, March 10th, and this is the Hendrick Hudson School Board of Education meeting. Can I have a motion to open the meeting, please?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so the Hendrick Hudson School Board will be convening a executive session. So we will be entering the executive session for the purpose of collective negotiations under the Taylor Law, medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment or promotion or demotion or discipline or suspension or removal of a particular person or corporation. Can I have a motion to move to exec, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So to the public, we will be back at approximately 7 p.m. We'll see you then. Good evening. This is Wednesday, March 10th, and this is the Hendrick Hudson School District Board of Education meeting. The board has just left executive session and is back in the public session. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda as stated?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I skipped a very important part of the meeting. I'm so sorry. Before we go to our consent agenda, can I have the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Please stand as we recite the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated.
All right, thank you very much. I seem to be having trouble with my mute button tonight, so again, I apologize. Does anybody have anything that they would like to pull from the consent agenda?
I would like to remove fiscal section 3.3. There's 3 items that are part of that I'd like to discuss. The bond proposal for the transportation for the buses, the Entergy grant, and then the third one is the service contract with Putnam Northern Westchester Posties.
Okay, does anybody else have anything to pull? All right, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda as stated?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so the first item pulled from our consent agenda is item 3.3 fiscal. Lisa, go ahead.
So the first item that I wanted to discuss was the bond proposal that would be appearing on our budget vote that happens in May. And so if we could just address really quickly, remind everybody what this is about and what it's for, and it's for a total of $525,000.
Yeah, so our transportation fleet are on a rotating basis in terms of life expectancy, whether it's buses or vans or other equipment. And what we've done for the last number of years, at least a decade plus, is we've had a separate line item on the budget for the public to approve that expense separate from the budget. And the reason is there have been instances where folks would support the budget, but not the transportation bond or so on and so forth. So we've always kept those separate, and that also creates a separate funding stream so that our transportation expenses for new vehicles are not paid for out of our general budget. So it's been a long-standing practice of the district.
And I believe this also includes the cost for some equipment as well as just buses. Is that correct?
I believe so. So Enrique is joining us here. We heard at our transportation budget proposal the need for some equipment upgrades in the bus garage relative to being able to maintain our fleet and keep them up to date and up to speed and meeting code. So Enrique, the question is just a quick overview of why we have always had a separate line item on the budget for transportation purchases, and including in this case equipment.
This has been going on for at least 25 years. There's always been a separate proposition And obviously it's because for two reasons. Back then, I don't know, but since the cap, this would have been part of the cap by being a proposition on its own. It's not part of the cap. The way we finance these vehicles is also very different than the way we finance anything else under our general fund. So those are the two main reasons why there's always been a separate proposition. My understanding, this goes back way back to the 1990s. Why back then, I don't know. But just imagine if we put this under our general fund, we would need to cut $525,000 out of somewhere else. Not now, but when the cap mattered to us, that's what it would have happened.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And then the other one I wanted to talk about was the Entergy grant resolution for $55,000. I was noticing that includes money for Wi-Fi upgrades, and I thought it would be good to hear a little bit more about that one.
Yes, we got a grant from Entergy, and this in 3 weeks we are going to upgrade some of our Wi-Fi. Actually, Laura can tell you a little bit more of the exact parts of our technology that we're going to upgrade, but it's part of $127,000 that Laura is going to be spending during the Eastern break to upgrade our technology. And I'll allow Laura to tell you exactly what she's planning to do.
Yes, so you'll see when I talk about my budget in a couple of weeks as well. The big focus this year is really replacing all of our infrastructure. One of that being Wi-Fi. So Entergy had actually done a grant years ago, probably 7 years ago, for something similar, maybe even more than 7 years ago. And our Wi-Fi, so every classroom or throughout the building, you have access points, which is the actual hardware, is really outdated. So it costs more than this, but Entergy was able to help us, cover some of the cost. And with everything that's been going on this year, my hope has been trying to get this Wi-Fi replaced sooner than later, rather than waiting till the summer. So Beth Gruber helped organize this. So this has just been phenomenal. So this will be able to, like Enrique said, my plan is spring break that all of the Wi-Fi is replaced inside all of the buildings. So that will really be a huge benefit to the students and the teachers when they return.
That would be wonderful. Wow, that's really exciting. Thanks for all your efforts in making that happen, and to Beth Gruber as well. The last item I wanted to pull is the $1.57 million that's for the Northern Westchester Putnam Posties for the 2021 school year. Just to explain, if we could, what that is about. It's a significant amount of money, and just so we understand why that is here in the budget and why there's a charge for it.
It's not a charge. Usually in March, April, BOCES send us, all the, at least with all the proposals, a list of all the services that they provide. So I send it around. Margaret gets it, Joe gets it, Laura gets it, Lisa gets it. So everyone signs, I'm going to need, professional development from here, and there. So then like that, BOCES can start making their budget. Then when all this happens, they send us back the form and tell us, based on what you requested, the total cost is going to be $1.6 million. Usually that happens in May, June when the board approves it. But because of COVID and because of things falling through the cracks, a little bit with us, a little bit with Posties, now we are asking the board to approve it, even though it's post all the expenditures, some of the expenditures that we have done at Posties. But this is a yearly process in which the board has to approve all our all our expenditures or potential expenditures with Posties. And it's all, like I said, it's always has to be done beforehand so they can do a budget based on what their 18 component districts are asking.
Thank you, Enrique. And maybe just to help remind us what some of the services are we receive from BOCES?
It goes from special education, where Lisa sends some of our students to their schools. Margaret can talk a little bit about professional development. Margaret, please, because that's a lot of money and you can explain better that part.
Yeah, I don't want to take too much time because, as Laura said, in a week or two or whatever, we'll be talking about our budgets, but tremendous professional development support. Individual teachers, our teacher leaders go to support there. We also acquire our science and social studies curriculum through BOCES. So I can expand upon that when it's my turn to talk. Thank you.
So, for example, Laura is buying all the all the student softwares now from BOCES. We try to spend as much as possible with BOCES because we get 40% back in state aid. So the more we spend, the more we get back. But it's mainly Lisa, Laura, and Margaret that we spend the money, but it can be from anything. It can be from arts and education. We do most of it through BOCES. It can be all the athletics. We do it through BOCES. The referees, everything comes through BOCES. So it's a lot that we spend with BOCES. So, but it's mainly shared services. Like, for example, the health insurance, we do it through BOCES. Also, the workers' comp, we do it through BOCES. So BOCES is a great resource for us. It's just a fantastic resource. So I'm very proud to say that our BOCES is just great.
Thank you. I really appreciate all that insight.
Anything else, Lisa?
Okay, so can I get a motion to approve fiscal 3.3 and then we'll move on to our donation?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the other item that was pulled from our consent agenda was a donation in the amount of $400 for the Doug Mowbray Art Award Scholarship Fund. Thank you very much to Helene and John McQuaid for this donation. This year in particular, the senior class, actually the high school in general, has not been able to do the fundraising that they have in the past because of COVID. It's been incredibly difficult to fundraise for some of our senior awards and scholarships, so this is greatly appreciated. Thank you very much. Can I get a motion to approve this donation, please?
So moved. And thank you.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And that brings us to our superintendent's report.
Yes, we're going to keep it very brief and highlight one important topic of which we communicated to our families last week, which was some school districts are calling it reopening. we're just basically expanding opportunities for secondary students to come in and receive in-person instruction more than 2 days a week. There has been discussions with the County Department of Health and the CDC and the state and schools across our region, especially as vaccinations ramp up and more staff are fully vaccinated. We are able to offer greater opportunities for middle school and high school students to return in person. As you know, we are one of the few elementary schools in our region that has been opened every day for families who wish to send their kids every day, taught by a certified teacher all day. That's a very important distinction that I make. Our middle school and high school schedule is very typical for the region in terms of kids coming in cohorts and having Wednesday as a day of check-ins with teachers and being able to be part of small group meetings or instruction or AIS and the like. We are currently going through the process of identifying what space needs we have and the amount of dividers we would need to purchase. So the plan had always been, or we had always been permitted to have students in school with less than 6 feet social distancing with dividers. The issue is the science community was stuck on whether or not dividers or partitions were as safe and sound as they would have liked. And so they said that schools can open with less than 6 feet social distancing and dividers. But in Westchester County, it was recommended that we not do that. So that did not happen in our county, but as vaccinations increase, schools are looking at that purchase, and we are as well. So our team met last week to review some of the needs. We performed a needs assessment. We will meet again tomorrow to identify, to make sure that we have enough space at the middle school and high school to feed students, to identify what classrooms may need dividers. At this time, we believe that if every child returned to the middle school 5 days a week from their current 2-day-a-week hybrid model, that we would not need dividers in classrooms, but we may need dividers in cafeterias. So Mr. Owens and his team are working through that, and we'll get a report tomorrow. And the high school is looking at their schedule to determine if it can feed as many as 500 students at the same time. And the high school has an enrollment of about 750, but we have about 250 students that are full-time remote and have committed to do that for the rest of the year. The high school is going to be a little tricky, and that may take more time. The reason is because they designed a bell schedule this year where there's only one lunch period. So the whole school is on pause, staff and kids, and they're all eating at the same time. The reason we did that was out of an abundance of caution. Typically, the high school schedule has 4 lunch periods, and the custodial staff sort of do a quick wipe down in between periods. Well, that was not permissible under the guidance we received from the Department of Health and the CDC. So the high school decided to have one unified lunch period for the entire building. That may pose some troubles in getting everyone back to school quickly, because we have to find additional cafeteria space should every student return every day. But we've been in communication with the high school folks. As I said, we're going to have an update meeting tomorrow. There will be a cost to purchasing dividers, but the cost right now is not as great as we thought that it was. If we needed to buy a partition for every single classroom, so on and so forth. The partitions we're investigating, Anthony Merlini has been doing that task for us the last few weeks. They meet all of the current standards and requirements. The ones that we're looking at are OSHA certified. So that's an added layer of significant comfort for families, who may have questions around the science community's position on partitions. But we are all moving regionally together, which I think is important. But again, our return to more in-person instruction really is because of the phenomenal job the county has been able to do with ramping up vaccines. Late yesterday, I received an email from our contacts in the county that they reserved a number of vaccination appointments just for Hendrick Hudson staff. Those appointments are throughout the day tomorrow in White Plains, and also Friday in Valhalla at the community college. So the county has made good on their word that they were going to work with school districts to try to get folks vaccinated in a short period of time. And tomorrow and Friday are HENHUD vaccination days for staff. So we had sent that out yesterday, but things are moving quicker. I'll also say as a cautionary tale that just because we have or may have more students in school more often, that does not change any of the requirements in terms of wearing a mask, of contact tracing and having the quarantine. And in fact, we do believe that one of the unintended consequences of bringing back more students is there is the potential for more students that may have to sit out due to contact tracing. So we want to make sure that while we're planning for the opportunity to invite more students back every day, that it does not negate the risk of the spread of the virus. And that is still a real legit concern. We've had a number of cases just this week. I think we've already had 3 cases this week. So it's not going away. And in fact, the medical community has warned us to not let our guard down as the snow melts and the sun shines and more people get vaccinated. So we still have to be very thoughtful and careful about those measures. But we'll have more information by the end of the week in terms of what a potential timeline is. I'll tell you that the timeline of returning more students is really contingent on how many partitions and dividers we need to purchase and when they can arrive, and whether or not they need to be physically installed, or if we're going to need to move them around. So things are looking better, but we're certainly not out of the woods yet. I know there are a lot of questions about graduation and outdoor activities in next year. We don't have information on any of that yet. But the county executive did send a letter to the New York State Department of Health, asking them to give a lot of attention so schools can receive guidance about end of year planning. For example, increasingly you can have more folks eat out at a restaurant, weddings and social events can happen, but we have not received the green light to have the school equivalent of those events take place. And we know that families are really itching to understand what our expectations are in terms of graduation, or for having moving up ceremonies. The PTAs are interested in having outdoor events this spring. So we echo that sentiment, but we're awaiting guidance. So good news in terms of returning students, but we'll have some more information on Friday in terms of the mechanics and potential timeline.
Allie, go ahead.
I had a question about the timeline, so thank you for addressing that. The virtual option will remain for middle school and high school students, correct?
Correct. And Margaret and I were talking about that earlier. We have not received anything in terms of a directive from the state saying that we need to terminate it or can terminate it. Essentially, the provision for having a remote option came out of the reopening guidance in the summer, and that it was at least for the full school year. So we do not anticipate eliminating that option from parents. And in fact, we encourage them staying in their model, because that will help us reopen for those that wish to return more than 2 days.
Thank you.
Lori, did you have a question?
Something that I had brought up with Carol that I shared with some people. Is there a point where we could actually speak with the principals too, or have a principal presentation? Because quite frankly, they're in the buildings, they know what's going on, they'll have great input. So I would like to hear from the principals. We usually have an update at the end of the year, but sooner than later would be appreciated, because they know the atmosphere, they know the kids, they know what's truly going on. And if we could provide what they need, I think that would really be beneficial. So I would like to actually have a principal's presentation, please.
Sure. I can tell you they're at the table planning with us. They, walk their building, and they have their tape measures in terms of 6 feet social distancing and how many desks are in classrooms. And they work very closely with their custodians and Anthony, but sure, we can schedule something so you can hear their perspective.
Joe, I know last week we had mentioned that for the kids who are really struggling with the remote model, that we've been trying to bring them back into school full time sooner than anybody else. If a parent feels like their child is struggling and they would really desperately like them in full time sooner rather than later, who do they contact about that?
Yeah, that conversation typically starts with the school counselor in terms of giving the school counselor information that perhaps the staff or a particular teacher wouldn't have. I can tell you that all of the schools are having regular conversations with their academic teams about failures and how many students are failing courses and whether it's an attendance issue or a model issue or just kids struggling. So yeah, over the last number of months, really since the new year, we have a number of high school and middle school kids who have asked to return, or we demanded that they return more often than just 2 days, and we've been able to accommodate that. The reason we can't accommodate everyone yet is because of the actual physical layout of classrooms, and to make sure that under the current model that we have at least 6 feet of social distancing. So I know that when we receive a request, Carmen and I will look at actually the physical enrollment of how many students are in each class in person to see if there's enough space, and then we'll make that determination. But long-winded answer saying yes, that's still an option, and that oftentimes those conversations need to start with the school counselor, and then they advocate on behalf of the kids.
Carol, just so you have all the information, we also have been doing this all along at the elementary level. So we've had quite a number of families through the fall semester and right up until this past week call their building principal and ask if they can return. The policy that we followed this year at elementary was you call your home school. If there is not space because of the social distancing, then we offer you a slot at a school where there is room. So right now, there are probably students at both Frank G. and Furnace Woods that come from other schools. The family has the right to say they don't wish to do that. They'll stay remote, but we've had quite a number of families at elementary return over the course of the past 6 months.
Thank you, Margaret, for that information.
You're welcome.
Does anybody else have any questions? Joe, did you have any other updates for us?
No, we were going to save our team's updates for next Wednesday so we could get to our main agenda topic.
Okay, I think we will hold our committee reports for next week as well. I'm sure we'll have more discussion next week also, so I don't want to leave too much till next week. Does anybody have an urgent committee report for tonight? No, okay. So that brings us to our presentation and discussion section, the star of the night.
So with us tonight is John McCarthy. The board knows John very well. He's done a lot of strategic planning work with the board and has done goal setting retreats and worked a great deal with the board the summer after of Indian Point's announced closure. And he and his former colleague Lynn Allen at Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES and previous superintendent Jim Langlois worked with the board and helped us really focus and prioritize what life after Indian Point looked like. We did a book study, and from that book study, we built a multi-year plan of how to get ready for life after Indian Point. And a significant piece of that was commissioning a school facility study, a cost analysis that was done back in 2018. That report was given to the board back in November of 2019. And there were a number of options for the board to consider in terms of reorganizing students or potentially closing schools that could bring the district significant savings to offset drastic tax increases. In January of 2020, the board narrowed down the options to the Princeton plan, which are dividing elementary students by grade level and have them move between the 3 elementary schools by grade level, or status quo, basically the model that we currently have, and not abandon that and keep it the way it is. So over the last number of months, we identified, actually it was a year ago, we had a stakeholder committee, about 30 plus members, which John will thank them and identify them shortly. But our first meeting was supposed to be in person on March 27th, 2020. As all of you know, our world changed then. So our focus went to online instruction and trying to wrap up last year. And then our focus all summer was reopening this year and making sure we had all the systems and structures in place. And at the board's request, we revisited the conversation with the stakeholder group around the Princeton plan. The stakeholder committee did meet back in late November. We identified some school districts in our area to speak to learn more about their experience and help answer our questions. And we moved along the process of tonight's presentation, which is presenting the Board of Education and the community a SWOT analysis. And I'll turn it over to John to talk about the SWOT analysis, the process, and his involvement facilitating this group for us, which was supposed to start last March, but started in earnest in November. So John, take it away.
Thanks, Joe. Good evening, everybody. It's wonderful to be back at Hendrick Hudson and working with you again. Greg, if you can go to the next slide, please. Now, for me, this is the most important slide, right? We have a wonderful group here that has met, and all of us owe this group a big thank you for all of the work that they have done for us. As Joe mentioned before, it's a rather large group. There's actually 37 people who are involved in this group. They're comprised of parents, community members, teachers, and administrators. And their ability to work and function as a team really needs to be recognized and thanked. Again, hopefully some of them are on watching us live tonight, but really, what a wonderful group to work with. And also, you can see the double asterisk down below for Greg. As you guys know, Greg is just an unbelievably great professional. He has been instrumental in helping us. Obviously, this online format, doing things virtually is not ideal for this kind of work. But with Greg's help, we've been able to really do some amazing things to get to the answers that we were looking for. I don't know if the board would like to say something to this group, but again, for me, this is the most important slide. This is really a tremendous group, and really, I can't say enough about them.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank everybody for their involvement in this group. It was a tremendous time commitment, and I feel like everybody that agreed to work with the stakeholder committee really put their heart and soul into it. They really were very thoughtful, tried to get as much information as possible, gather information from the community that the community might want to hear as well. So I am really proud of them, and I'm very happy that they were able to participate in this process, and I hope that it was educational and useful for them as well. So thank you again for that commitment. Does anybody else want to make any comments?
Perhaps we can wait to the end. I don't see anyone making any additional comments, but we can wait to the end, because I think when you see the final product and the work that they were able to accomplish, I think it'll be very impressive for the board. Next slide, please. Joe, do you want to just continue with this slide a little bit, because you've mentioned some of the things on here? If not, I can go through it if you'd like.
Yes, sorry, I had my microphone off. So this is, as John said, here we go. Our timeline. So we first met in November on Zoom, which is, as John said, wasn't ideal, but necessary to identify what our goals were and what the charge of the committee was. The committee had many, many questions, right? This was a very intro level of learning what the Princeton plan is and trying to identify more information and where we could go. What we did was we identified 3 school districts in our region, our immediate region, that are organized in the Princeton plan. And you see them here: Ossining, Somers, and Tarrytown, districts of similar demographics and districts of different demographics. And we identified the top 10 questions that the committee had, and we scheduled, I believe it was 7 meetings with various stakeholders from Ossining, Somers, and Tarrytown. Teachers, administrators, parents, PTA members. And basically, John and I just played matchmaker. We identified dates and times everyone was available. We set up a Zoom or a Google Meet, and each of those 7 meetings went through the standard 10 questions to make sure everyone was hearing the same information. And then there was a great opportunity for Q&A, conversations about how PTAs are involved, or different transition experiences that school districts use because kids are, moving between 1st and 2nd grade. How does special ed services or programs move or support children? What happens when a transition doesn't go so well? All of those things. And it really was enlightening because there were so many questions and interests and some concerns that it was great to have folks who live it, who experience it, who work in it, or parents who have children supporting those models. What do you do if you have a kid in 2 schools? How do the elementary schools communicate to make sure they don't have concerts on the same night or back to school night, those sort of things. Those meetings generated a few more questions on the operations end. So we scheduled another round of meetings for the committee to learn a little bit more about the financial side of the Princeton plan. We've said that the Princeton plan can bring the district significant savings, and we talked about how. We talked about what class sizes would look like, number of teachers by grade level in each of the 3 schools, the fact that no programs would be eliminated, but the savings come from being more efficient and having more kids in the same place at the same time that need the same program. And that's important that in this model, there are no programs that would be eliminated. We then had additional Q&A opportunities, just as members of the stakeholder committee were learning more or going back to their PTAs and talking to their families and getting more questions. And then we had 5 small SWOT analysis meetings last week. So as John said earlier, we had a committee of close to 40 folks, and we wanted to make sure that we had meetings to facilitate high levels of input and participation from every single member. And we knew that one way to do that was to have smaller group settings. So what John did is he facilitated 5 different meetings. One day last week, everyone picked a meeting and signed up for it. So the culmination that you'll see later today is a result of 5 groups of folks that went through, had this experience, and then all came together this Monday night for a little over 3 hours and compiled all of their feedback and input to the report that you're going to hear tonight. So the committee's work was not simple. It was very daunting. It was very intense. Everyone spent a considerable amount of their own time and energy learning more and asking questions and being involved. So we're really, really proud of the fact that they took their role seriously, and we think that they provided the board and community some really tangible feedback in terms of what potential next steps could be.
And just to piggyback a little bit on that, it's really important when you go into the SWOT analysis that you have a really good understanding of the issues facing the district. And I will tell you that I believe our group does. And even more importantly, to really understand the Princeton plan model. So I think with a series of these meetings that you see in front of you and conversations that happened over the last couple of months, I really believe that our group had a real good understanding of the Princeton model and also the issues facing the district. Next slide, please. So this is the charge that we were given. The charge was basically to perform the SWOT analysis. As Joe said, it was a series of meetings that led up to this, and then provide the board with feedback from the SWOT analysis. And again, I think this group took it very seriously, and I'm hoping at the end of this evening, you'll believe that the information they have provided you will be very helpful as you make your decisions moving forward. Next slide. So in order to do a SWOT analysis properly, you have to have a goal, something that you're working towards, right? And as an agency, you want to look at, what are some of the things that are currently going on in your district, and what are some of the things out there that are going to help you either obtain your goal or prevent you from getting to your goal. Now, we had to work about what was possible, not what was impossible. So for us, we had to believe that the district was moving in this direction as far as going to the Princeton plan. But to be very clear, and it was said to the group, and I want to make sure it's on this presentation as well, This does not mean that the board has made a decision moving in the direction of the Princeton plan, but for us, we needed to think that way so we could really look at this really deep and really make sure that at the end of the day, if you do choose to move in this direction, you'll have the information that you'll need to help you be successful. Make sense? All right, next slide, please. So let me briefly explain to you the SWOT analysis process. As the board knows, and Joe mentioned before, this is a process that the board used a number of years ago as they were facing the closing of Indian Point. So SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And I'm going to just go through this matrix with you a little bit so you have an understanding of each of the different boxes and how they interact. So let's just talk about the strengths and the weaknesses, the top part, right? That is things that are going on in the present, right? So what are our current strengths for the district? And what are some of our current weaknesses in the district, right? And I think it's important that you understand, though, as we looked at our strengths and weaknesses, we were looking at it through the lens of if we were to move to the Princeton plan, right? Not currently everything going on in our district, all the strengths, all the weaknesses, but we're really trying to identify those strengths and those potential weaknesses that would help us or hurt us as we move forward in looking at going towards the Princeton plan. The bottom two, opportunities and threats, are futuristic and outside threats, outside of the organization, things that are going on. So what are the opportunities potentially out there if we were to move to the Princeton plan? And then what are some of the potential threats that are out there that could stop us or prohibit us from moving towards the Princeton plan? So now I want to look at it this way, right? I want to look at strengths and opportunities. The things that are identified there are things that will help us obtain our goal, right? So the strengths that we currently have, we want to maximize those. We want to take advantage of any opportunities that are out there that can make our plan successful. The things on the right-hand side, the weaknesses and the threats, are things that are potentially harmful. They're going to stop us from getting to our goals. So what are the current weaknesses that we have right now in place that we need to either fix or eliminate, right? Totally. And what are some of the threats that are out there that could potentially hurt us? And we need to ward those off. So as we did this exercise, we're looking at it through the lens of if we were to move to this plan, what are our strengths of the district that we want to maximize, right? What are some of our weaknesses that we want to take away? What are some of the opportunities that we want to take advantage of? And what are some of the threats that are out there that we want to ward off? Any questions from the board about this slide? Okay, next slide, please. So as Joe said, on Monday night, we met, and what I'd like you to just make sure you have in front of you tonight is this large list. Now this list the board has is the backup material that we utilized on the night of March 8th when we did our prioritizing of the SWOT analysis. There's 202 things on that list, 202 entries. They are either individual thoughts or a couple of people sharing the same thoughts. So our job was to not only go over this list with everybody because they saw it in its entirety for the first time on Monday night, but then what we had to do was try and prioritize the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and threats, try and narrow them down to give the board a helpful tool to utilize. Now, with that said, you have all the information from all the group meetings last week, right? You have every one of the people's thoughts, and you can utilize that any way you want. You can utilize it if we were to move forward with the Princeton plan or potentially not move forward with the Princeton plan. There's really good information throughout that entire document. So then what we did was the first time we broke out, we asked them to just look at our strengths and our weaknesses. They met as a group. There was 6 to 7 people in each of the groups, and they, as their small group, had to narrow it down to 5 different areas under each of the strengths and the weaknesses. Then we came back as a large group. We tallied out the results, and I'll show you that in a second. And then we had a discussion about narrowing down the priorities. And that was really an interesting and a good part of this conversation. Again, not the best way to do it over the Zoom kind of meetings, but it definitely was helpful as far as hearing people and allowing people to be heard. Next slide, please. So in front of you was the report out. This is the actual document that came back with the strengths and the weaknesses from each of the groups. I just want to give, again, kudos to Greg, because he not only did he develop this sheet, but he also took the tallies as the meeting was going on, which was really helpful for us as we were trying to facilitate the meeting and have a discussion. So as you can see on the left-hand side, each of the groups reported out their top 5 areas, and it's ranked from their highest to their lowest. And as you can see here, the easy one that stands out to me on the strengths is the number 2, right? So that number 2, you're going to see again as we move on to the next slides, but you can see 5 out of the 6 groups chose number 2 as one of the areas that they would like to share with the board. And then group 6 didn't have the number 2, but it did rise to the top because, as you can see, many of the groups thought it was an important piece to share with the board. And then the same thing on the right-hand side, we looked at the ones that we had in common, the ones that we had 5 groups select, 4 groups select, and we narrowed it down. The challenge was, again, when we got down to the 2s and the 3s, and then the groups worked it out, one of the things that we decided to do, it kind of was on the spot, was we allowed people to combine some of the numbers. So what you don't see on here, and I'm just going to use group 1 as an example, they may have put down 36, the number 36 to their strengths from the large list, but they may have said, but we also thought that 42, 40, 12, and 5 were somewhat connected to those, and we kind of put them together in a grouping. And again, you'll see that in a second. Any questions about how we arrived at these numbers here? No? Okay, great. So let's move on to the next slide. So what my goal would be for tonight is to go through each of these slides. And again, it's a lot of information. And I understand that, you've got to have to absorb a lot of this and then potentially use this later on. But I'm going to do my best to explain each of these different slides. We'll go through them one at a time. And of course, Joe, Margaret, and Lisa, if you feel comfortable, you can jump in if I don't explain it correctly, or if you have a different thoughts on this. So again, we're looking at this from the highest to the lowest, and there's a couple of slides here that are just going to talk about the strengths that were identified by our stakeholder committee. So I'll give you a moment to read it. So as you can see in this slide, a couple of really great things that the district should be proud of, and it really is a wonderful thing to hear. The teachers are collaborative, they're highly invested in their children's education, and if you look at the slide, the next one, which you can see is a combination of 3, 4, and 7 on your large list. There's many things that the district are doing well. They're providing a high quality experience for all students. The special education programs are strong, and there's definitely in place some strong support services to help the students. So again, these are the identified strengths that we can carry forward if we were to move towards the Princeton plan. Any questions or comments about these 2 areas? No? Okay, let's move on to the next slide. I apologize if you're going to talk, you're going to have to somehow speak up, make sure, because I can't see with the slides on my screen. So the next one, take a moment to look it over. Again, you guys should be very proud of the work that's being done in the district. It's nice to see these things identified. Talking about a supportive community, a strong PTA, and that we're working with the social and emotional needs of the students. And just in case there's a question, Second Step is apparently a program that we use in the district to work with the students on their social and emotional learning. And then obviously the access to the counselors by the counselors and social workers to the students is an important piece.
John, I was just going to ask you what Second Step is, and thank you for letting me know that you can't see the other members on the screen, because I have them all up, and I'll try to keep track of whether there are questions and let you know if it looks like everybody's silent, okay?
I appreciate it. I just don't want to cut off some of the slide and then not be able to see that, so I do appreciate that.
Completely understand. Does anybody have any questions or comments about this slide?
Excellent. Okay, next slide, please. So the last portion of the strengths, as we can see, that one of the strengths was identified as we have a diverse community. And I think there was really an important message being sent about the use of teacher and grade level leaders as an important tool if we were to move forward with the Princeton plan, because they could be beneficial as we have to change and redesign some things in the future if we were to use the Princeton plan. So again, I open it up to any comments about the strengths, any questions that you may have. Okay, perfect. Oh, yeah.
Lisa has a question.
I do. I just was wondering if you could explain to us and help us understand number 27. It doesn't appear on the list of the top 5 that any of the groups chose. And so how did that become part of one of the, top 7 strengths that was listed?
Excellent question, Lisa. So it could have been someone's number 2 as far as they did their 5, or say their number 6, or they combined it with a couple of other things. But what happened organically through the conversation with the large group, people started talking about, well, I was thinking about putting this one on, or we had that on our list and we pulled it off at the last second. And then someone would advocate for, let's say, number 27, and then explain to the group why they felt that was an important piece to share with the board. And then ultimately, at the end, the group made the decision, yes, let's include this one on. Because again, having people explain what they may feel about that particular point, like the grade level leaders, was important for the whole group to hear, and allowed them to potentially change their mind a little bit, or decide to, hey, let's just add it to the board because we think it is important. So though it's not on that original list, that box of those report outs, but it is something that came up with our conversation with the large group.
Thank you.
Anybody else have comments or questions? I just want to say myself, I am really pleased to see that this whole list is so focused on how excellent our teaching staff is and our teaching programs. So, we've got a lot of strengths identified here, and community involvement as well with the PTA presence and their cultural enrichment program. So very encouraging to see that we have such dedicated teachers in teaching programs.
Okay, so next slide, Greg, please. So sometimes it's easy to do the strengths, right? You can sit there and you can list a bunch of strengths and people feel good about themselves. But sometimes the challenge is when you have to start talking about our weaknesses or potential threats. And again, think about the group, right? It was made up of community members, parents, many of which were on the PTA as well. So they have a dual role there. You have teachers there and you have administrators there. But we really wanted people to be open and honest about their feelings, and they believe that they really were. So again, that's a credit to them as a group. And sometimes it's easy to take these personal, right? When people start pointing out some of the things that you don't do well. And I just want to caution everybody, the board, administrators, parents, PTA, community members, this is just information for us to use to improve. So if you look at it through the lens of, hey, listen, we've got this great information of how we can improve as a district, and that's how you utilize it. Don't take it personal. Use it as a way to grow as a district. So again, you're going to see some things on here that are weaknesses of ours. And again, it's as we look to move towards the Princeton plan, if that's what you choose to do. Okay, so one of our current weaknesses going on right now in the district, you can see, let me let you look at the slides first, and then I'll go through them real quick. Okay, so under our current plan right now, we have some special education students that cannot attend their neighborhood school because their programs are in another school building. So that has been identified as a challenge and a concern or a weakness. The 3 different elementary schools moving to the middle school tends to lead towards biases. And then this last one, which Joe spoke about a little bit earlier on, but the world has turned upside down. We're hopefully get to turn right side up real soon. But currently, right now, they've identified that many of our families are fragile, and they really are concerned about what's going to happen next year, and both the pandemic and their personal lives and school lives. And there'll be more to be said about this. But this is definitely something that right now, currently, what the district is going through and the community is going through is seen as a potential weakness if we were to move forward. Next slide, please. Questions. Questions. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know if this. I don't know if this is the right time to ask, because we're going through the process of what you did, and what do they mean by number 6? What do you mean it leads toward biases? Is this the appropriate time to ask that type of question, or are you just going through?
Absolutely. And I'll do my best to speak on behalf of the group. But my understanding is this is that when you bring 3 different schools together, and if some people have some preconceived ideas about potential different schools or different areas of the school district, when they now have to come to the middle school as a class together, it may have people thinking before they even get there that there's some differences among the students as they come through. If that makes sense. And again, Lori, it's not like, I don't want you to think that this is something that is a knock against any one school or any one, part of the district, but this is just something that came up, that people feel that bringing the students together at the middle school after being separated for all of elementary, there is some perceived biases going on.
Corey?
Yeah, I've got a question around neighborhoods. I've heard from parents that they're concerned about, the loss of neighborhoods around the elementary schools. And just been looking in some of these documents, I didn't see that specifically called out. And I was wondering if that's because it either wasn't discussed or because it was considered not one of the top priorities.
If it's not on, I believe there is a slide on here that will speak to that, or a portion of the slide that speaks to that a little bit. But I definitely can tell you that the sense of neighborhood, the sense of elementary school community was definitely spoken about. And I think it did rise to the level of coming on here. It may be under the threats later on as one of the discussion points.
Okay, maybe I missed it. I just want to make sure. I've been hearing a lot about that recently. I just want to make sure it's at least called out.
Yeah, it was definitely spoken about. And again, I apologize. We finished on Monday night late, and you got all the documents. I recognize you got them today, I believe. So it's a lot to read. And again, Corey, there could be more to come to that issue in this presentation. If not, you can go through the other documents, or we can do it together, and I can discuss that with you. But clearly, the neighborhood school and being part of the school community was definitely brought up during our discussions.
Okay, thanks.
Allie?
Sorry, probably my mute. Number 5, I don't think many community members know this. If you don't have a child in the special ed system, can you just, for the sake of educating our community, what does that mean, number 5?
So you have the best person on the meeting tonight that can speak to this, Lisa. But my understanding is, and Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong, is that if a student's in a specialized program and there's not enough students in that particular neighborhood school that they could house that program in the school, that they have to pool students together from different schools to run that program. So
no, really what
okay,
it is, I'm sorry for my voice if I lose it. Really what it is that students are split amongst the district. So not all special ed students are in one building. So before I got here, there was a rotation of where each cohort would be. For example, next year's cohort of kindergartners for ICT would go to Furnace Woods. First grade is going to be at Frank G. So each building has different levels. There's no more than 2 grade levels of special ed in each building that are ICT. If they're specialized classes, not resource room, but if they're specialized ICT skills, our 12-on-1s or ABCs, they're in specific buildings. So it's just that if the program isn't there and the families don't want to move their students, they revoke consent for their IEP so the students don't get services.
So we already have some students that are, if you live in Furnace Woods, but the service you need is at BV, we have some students that have to go across town. Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Or they just revoke consent, which means students do not get any specialized instruction or special education.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
Well, you have the expert in the room, so thank you, Lisa. I appreciate it. Any other questions on this slide?
Yeah, I have questions actually. So that was identified as a weakness of going to the Princeton plan, but we're already transporting students across the district for a certain program. So I didn't understand why that was considered a weakness that was identified if we had decided to go to the Princeton plan.
Again, it's something that I think right now that the district recognizes that may not be ideal. And if you move to the Princeton plan and continued that practice, which you may have to, just depending on the numbers, they just wanted to make sure that you, again, what you're going to use this for is to do everything possible to make this not happen, right? To have kids in the same grade levels working together. So if it was in the Princeton plan, you would try the best you can to have the kindergartners and first graders and their special ed programs among their peers right there in the building. The same would be true for third and fourth, and then, second and third, and then fourth and fifth. Right, but there is a possibility that in the future, if you have a small number of kids that you may have to be not necessarily with their peers. So your job as a school district would say, okay, this has been recognized as something that's not great for kids right now. If we would move to the Princeton plan, our ideal situation would be to have their kids with their classmates, the same grade levels, not necessarily their neighborhood school, obviously, but with the students of the same grade level.
Okay, thank you. And then I have another comment, but does anybody else have a comment before I make another comment? Okay, so number 10, that many children, families in our school community are fragile right now, socially and emotionally, due to the impact of the pandemic in their personal lives and with school. They don't know what is happening next year. I just wanted to make it's not so much a question as a comment. We have been getting a lot of emails from our community members, and we are reading all of them, and we're certainly sympathetic to, the COVID situation at the moment and what families are going through. So I am not surprised to see this on this list, and we do hear you.
Okay. Thank you. Next slide, please, if there's no more questions. Great. Greg, next slide, please. Oh, you already got it up there. They look the same. I'm sorry. So again, I'll give you a moment to look through these. Okay, so the first one, I think it's pretty self-explanatory, except for maybe the district facilities. And I think that piece, it really relates to somewhat your location to another building. So for example, we heard that the Frank G. Lindsay students have the opportunity to use the track. They have the opportunity to do potentially a play on the stage at the high school. That's where that one goes to. The other ones I think are, clear that there's a belief that the class sizes, actually there is, the class sizes are different, a little funding difference. And then some of the programs are a little different between the different buildings. The next two, 34, 36, was really a very interesting conversation. It's about the difference between equity and equality. And one of the things they want, you to understand is, as we look to move to the future, we want to make sure that students are getting what they need to be successful. Not that they're not, we're not trying that now, but equal does not necessarily mean it's what students need to be successful. So that was a very good conversation. And then the last one speaks to the current class size caps being too large. Again, everybody recognizes that there's some financial strain in the district, but one of the concerns moving forward is if we were to max out the class sizes, again, going to the cap, that may not be a good experience for the students, and it doesn't seem to be educationally sound to do that, according to the group. So again, this is I believe the last slide under the weaknesses. So if you have any questions, I'll try to do my best to answer them.
I just found out that Mary Pat's been trying to ask questions and she hasn't been able to get in.
Oh boy.
And
I'm sorry, Mary
so
Pat.
we're trying to unmute her, but we might have to go back a little bit.
That's fine. Can she write in her questions and then make an answer them that way? Would that work?
That might work. In the meanwhile, while we're figuring out the technical difficulties, I'm really sorry, Mary Pat. Oh, she's signing back on another screen I see. Hopefully that'll solve the problem. But does anybody else have any questions while we're trying to figure out this technical issue? Allie?
Does anybody know our current class size caps? They're under state requirements, correct? Can somebody confirm that for me? That's my understanding.
Joe would be the best to answer that one. Joe?
Yeah, I don't believe so. We have a board policy that sets our caps, and the board policy also talks about how we remedy situations if we exceed the cap. For example, it's not that we always hire an additional teacher. Maybe it's an additional teaching assistant. Depends on the time of year, those sort of things. The teacher's contract references class size, but as a recommendation, not a mandate. The only mandate we have is internal mandate, and that's our Board of Education policy.
So there's not state mandates for class sizes?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
that there very well could be, but not that I'm aware of right now. The only ones I'm aware of is if we had a universal pre-K program, the demands on pre-K are no more than 18 children.
Okay, so as a board policy, if I don't know, maybe I'm getting ahead of the process, that's something that we could consider down the line, reconsidering is lowering the class cap, right?
Sure. Yeah, that's a policy decision discussion for the board to have. When we've had it before, we've looked at the trajectory of future enrollment, and we've looked at trends in the rearview mirror, and then we determine whether or not that would necessitate more staff, and then a budget implication, those sort of things.
Thank you.
Now, to your point, which was a good one, this information would be used as you start developing your action plan. If you were to decide to move forward and restructure the elementary school, you would use this information, say, okay, what do we need to do to address the class size cap, right? And then we would either put that in our action plan or choose not to. So that's how you would actually use all of this information moving forward.
I'll chime in. Being a teacher, I don't know why there's any confusion, to tell you the truth. Especially in this pandemic, I just got a little heated with 34 and 36. And I know it's just this process of what the people have gone through. But let me tell you something, that we give everything. Every teacher in this district, every teacher that I work with, especially under this COVID situation, has gone way above and beyond anything to meet the needs of children, to help them to be successful. So I kind of take, I know I shouldn't be, and I probably shouldn't be voicing this right now, because, you know, this is the process that we went through. But let me tell you, parents, just like you are doing yours at home, we are doing it in school too, whether it's mandated or not, whether a kid needs help. I have kids texting me right now for math help or reading help. That's why you see me looking down, because they need help with their homework. We're doing Zooms with them at no matter what time. We're meeting them at McDonald's, or we're meeting them. We are doing everything, built in or not built in, to help these kids do whatever they need to succeed. We're bringing them food. We're bringing them clothing. We're bringing them stuff, whatever they need. We're giving them extra time. We're working with their work schedules, because I work with big kids, high school kids. So please know that that is happening, and equity and equality, even though they're different, they are kind of the same too, to tell you the truth. So please do not worry that your children are not being treated equitably or equally, because I kind of take a little offense to that, to tell you the truth, because I know what me and my colleagues, and I know what many of the teachers in HenHUD are doing. So please, just know that everything is going on to help your kids be as successful as possible.
Lori, I love your passion. I love your passion about it. And again, I think this is just good information to have. And
I know. I went off track with that a little bit, because I know you went through the process, and I'm getting.
No, you're good. You're good. And I think you're passionate about it. And I think that's important. And I think it's just, again, you know, there just may be a communication or just a couple of meetings that may have to occur to explain, you know, what we are actually doing in the district as it relates to each of the students. And you saw some really good things early on. It said that, you know, all students are getting a great education. There's things there in place to help students if they're struggling with the different resources that are out there. So it's just, again, one piece of the puzzle that you need to just look at. And again, you want to try, if this is a perceived weakness or it actually is a weakness, you have to address it in order to move forward. But I love your passion.
I know.
John? John, could I interrupt? I want to just address what Lori said. So Lori, number one, let me just say, as a teacher, I agree with everything you just said 1,000%. But let me also say that that's not what the group intended by 34 and 36. What they are looking at here, I believe, is that in schools, we often say, that school gets one reading teacher, this school gets a reading teacher, that school gets a reading teacher, even though in one school the need might be twice as much as another school. So we have a tendency to do our staffing that way. And I think that reflects the fact that giving everybody the same amount of things is not helpful if one school or two schools or three schools have more need. So it's about looking across the board and giving every school what they need to be successful, not giving everybody the same amount of something.
Right. That's what I thought 21 was. I was thinking 21 was inequities between the
With a
buildings.
little bit of that also in there. So, it's interesting that it comes across in multiple ways. And that reference in 21 to programs, actually in the conversation was about the fact that our curriculum is really tight. We have truly amazing teachers, especially at the elementary level, working together across 3 schools really to make sure that that curriculum is consistent. That's not an easy thing to do. So all credit to them. But even they are willing to admit that if we're all teaching the same curriculum, but I have 25 kids and you have 12, there's a difference there in how that instruction gets played out for those students. I don't have as much time if I have twice as many kids to give every kid what they need. So there was some, I thought it was a very rich conversation Monday night. I will definitely agree with John, especially in the group that I was in. So I just, wanted to clarify a little bit.
Oh, I agree with you. And everything that you said, I thought was in 21. I'm thinking programs in between buildings. So when I saw the sentence, being worried about treating kids equally doesn't mean so my thought was coming that way for 34 and 36.
I gotcha.
But again, I know this was a process, and this is what perception and a little bit of education goes a far way. Yes.
Okay.
And
Thanks.
just Margaret, please feel free to jump in sooner so we don't get Lori's blood pressure going so much. That was a great explanation, and that's exactly how the group spoke. So good summary there, Margaret. I definitely appreciate that.
Yeah, thank
Before we
you.
move on-
If any of the administrators, want to jump in and clarify anything for us, that would be fantastic. Feel
Definitely
free.
helpful for me, for sure.
Mary Pat, it looks like your phone is unmuted. Are you able to talk now?
Oh, yeah, I guess. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I sure can.
Yes.
Yay, yes.
Well, here's my question. I mean, I've been looking at this, and I don't understand. Like, you have it listed as a weakness. These things aren't going to change. Like, there's some confusion between equity and equality. We're still going to be giving everybody whatever they need, whether it's equity, equality. We're not going to change cap sizes. We're not going to change inequities. Everything, those things are going to stay the same. The special ed kids are still going to wind up having to, go where their program is. And it's not always based on their age group. And it seems to a certain extent, I'm not sure, like you specify their weaknesses, but I don't quite understand where those things are going to change. So are we going to make the current class cap sizes are too large? Or does that mean we're going to make every third grade class 24 kids now, not have 20 in some and 24 in other schools, or 18 or whatever the numbers? It's the cap sizes now. We're actually going to approach larger cap sizes. Ideally, that's part of the problem. That's part of the logic in doing this, so you can even it out and not have these sort of hang on class, these classes because of the way it's split, to have like these odd sizes. So I'm not quite sure why that would be considered a weakness.
So Mary Pat, you're spot on as far as.
Going to change.
So
that's not going to change.
Here's what I would say to you about that. So you're spot on as far as looking at this through the lens of what would we do next. But in order to do that, you have to have the action plan process. So as a board and as the administration looks at these different things, certain things you may choose to address, certain things you may say, you know what, we just can't do it. But it doesn't stop the group from presenting what they believe are some of the weaknesses. So for example, the class size cap is something that they're concerned about. But as we know, the board and the administration sometimes has to make some difficult decisions. And if you choose in your action plan not to address that, that's fine. That's the role of the board and the administration.
In looking at this, just in general, are we looking, when you put strengths and weaknesses, opportunities, are we looking at this as strengths and weaknesses of the district, of the going with the Princeton plan, of the benefits there, that will help us go with the Princeton plan or not go, depending on whatever it is? Because you look at some of these situations, for the strengths, the community is supportive of education. That's not going to change. The community is supportive of our education. That's not going to change. We have a diverse community. That's not going to change. Is this considered to a certain extent, why is this being highlighted? Because that's not something that's going to change no matter what, in terms of, you know, I mean, how we're looking at this possibility. I
So
mean,
with the
hopefully.
strengths, yep. So Mary Pat, with the strengths, what you want to do is you want to maximize them. You want to utilize them as you move forward with this plan. So you brought up a community that's supportive of the district, right? So you want to use that community to help you as you develop the plan, which is obviously something you're doing right now with the stakeholder group and having meetings like this. So they're going to be giving you some input to help you because they are supportive of the school district. You know, when you look at the diversity, how can we use the diversity as a positive thing as we move forward with this plan? What things can we do to enhance the use of the diversity in our new structure, right? So as you look at these different items, you're going to look at how do I, you know, maximize my strengths? How do I overcome my weaknesses if I can, right? If we can't overcome them, then we just lay that out there. We couldn't change that weakness. We want to know that it's there. We don't want to lose sight of it. So all this information is really just to help you guide you as you start developing your plan to move forward, one way or the other, either restructuring or not. So it's not like they're asking you to change it. They're actually giving you information so you realize that this is how they are seeing things and how what they believe are important to you, important for you as you make this decision. And again, this is something you can utilize the entire document for, you know, the 202 to look at. And you may say, you know what, as a board, we think, you know, strength number, 37 is the most important one. It wasn't even listed in our PowerPoint presentation. You can utilize that in your action plan, where you can address a weakness that's not necessarily listed here. But as a committee, they try to provide you with information of things that are important for us and things that they believe will help you make this decision if you move forward.
Okay, like I said, I mean, for example, as I said, the weaknesses, to a certain extent, it sort of seems like, you know, it doesn't seem like something, when you look at it, something that might be a problem and holding us back. I mean, it's to a certain extent, it's irrelevant because it's not going to change. I mean, again, I don't foresee class sizes. I mean, part of this was, I don't see the class sizes, you know, the cap sizes changing. So it's sort of like, you know, the cap, I don't know, it just seems a little,
but
this
technically,
information is there, but it's really not, it's again, it's not going to change, nothing's going to, it doesn't change. It's like, so that impact, if it's going to be the same on either, it's not going to have the impact, is my point. So it sort of seems a little,
well, I get technically, if the district got an influx of finances and you could make the decision at some point to lower the class cap. I'm not advocating for that, but the group would be remiss if they didn't add this in there as something that they're concerned about. So it's something that's happening now that there's a little bit of concern about, that we're creeping up on the cap. And then if the opportunity presents itself in the future, near future, for 10 years from now, where you could lower that cap size, this will be something that you could potentially do. And I'm not saying that you're in a position to do that right now, but for the stakeholder group, it was important for them to share what they felt was one of the weaknesses.
So it's basically weaknesses for the district, not necessarily that in going forward on anything else. So this theoretically could be used on any particular project we want for the district, not necessarily just the Princeton plan.
Correct.
Theoretically.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. You're right on. Are we okay to move on to the next slide?
I think we are.
Okay, great. So after going through the first half of the presentation with the large group, we then broke back into small groups, and then they discussed the opportunities and threats. And again, the opportunities could be some strengths that we want to, take further, or it could be things out there that we currently don't have that we could take advantage of. And some of the threats could be some of our weaknesses that would be exasperated if we moved into this and become a real big threat. Or are there things out there that were threatening, could potentially threaten the plan? So this one's easy, right? If you look at across the top, everybody picked number one as their top one across, right? And then there was a whole mix of different numbers in there, fours and groups of three and those kind of things. But if you look at the opportunities, number one clearly rose to the top. And then anything that wasn't really highly picked by all the groups, again, we then had a long discussion. And as Joe said, we went for about 3 hours and Again, I have to applaud the group for their hard work on this. So we'll go through the same exercise with opportunities, potential opportunities out there, and then we'll talk about the threats. Next slide. Oh, yep, there you go. So I'll give you an opportunity to read that.
Any comments or questions about this slide? I think one is pretty self-explanatory.
Mm-hmm.
And the second one to me seems to kind of mirror the other concern that when kids go to middle school, that there is a perception of difference in the students, that there's, yeah, right? So this
Yes.
would be an opportunity to correct that.
And you'll see that again a little bit
this.
later on, I think, in another portion of this presentation. I love the last sentence in there, and I think we heard this loud and clear with all the different districts that we spoke to, that one of the things that really resonated was that everybody from day one would be part of Sailor Nation, you know, and all feeling as one group. Any questions or comments about this slide?
Yeah, John, I just want to, that last one, I mean, we all know it's a great opportunity for that, but did you hear from any parents that felt differently about that?
Felt differently about the separation piece?
Yeah.
I think we heard comments, and again, you'll see some later on. I think when you look at some of the threats, and again, I think there's some people who really feel strongly about the sense of community at the elementary school and the kids working together there. But I do think that in the end, I don't think anyone disagreed necessarily with this particular part of the slide, that, really clearly everybody would be part of feeling from the beginning one school district. I think currently as it stands now, each of the elementary schools, I think, have their own names, I guess. I don't know what each of them are, but so to answer your question, Corey, we did hear it. There's no question. We heard some people feeling very strongly about keeping the elementary schools and having their own identities and their own communities. There's no question about that. And again, I think you'll see that later on.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
If I may,
yeah.
I've been on the board for 12 years, and I think for 12 years, I have asked for that to be changed. Like, the one elementary school is one thing, one elementary is another thing. I'm like, and I said, we are all one district. So I don't know why we're just not all blue and white and all the same thing and all sailors, whether you're mini shipmates or whatever. But yes, I agree with that. Whether we do this plan or not, that should just be the way it is anyway.
They actually are all the same color.
2 cents.
I was going to say, aren't we all blue and white now?
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes. They're not, because they are I know.
What color is Frank G? What color is Frank G? And what color is everything?
Blue and white.
Everything outside that building is red.
That's because they haven't painted it yet.
And
but the kids wear blue and white.
Another discussion.
Yeah, that could be a nice debate for another day, for sure.
Another discussion.
There you go. Anything else about this particular slide? Perfect. Greg, can we move on to the next slide, please? So again, another opportunity here. The first one up on this particular slide is talking about really matching students up well in the buildings. So for example, if you have a school currently right now that only has two classes at a particular grade level, there's not a lot of opportunities to mix kids up, right? To meet both their academic and their social emotional needs. Under the Princeton's plan, you'll have 8 to 9 potential sections. So there's a good chance to do that. And then obviously you can match students with teachers that would work well with them. And not that all teachers work well with kids, but there may be a better fit between the teachers and particular students. And then the other one at the bottom really speaks about their friendships and the people that they can meet up with both the students and the families. But particularly students can now have a larger pool of students, friends to pick from that may have similar interests as they do.
Margaret, do you want to flesh this one out a little bit?
So, let's start with 19 and 31. So it is much easier when you are as a principal, you have 7, 9, 10 sections where you can spread students out for a variety of reasons. And I know oftentimes, we tend to think that small is good, but if you're Furnace Woods and you only have 2 sections of each grade level, you have very limited ways in which you can pair people. That's both a issue of matching teacher-student personalities, matching student-to-student personalities. So, that's an important thing to consider. It also goes back to class size as well. When you have more sections on a grade level, one more student that comes in isn't likely to tip you into, new section territory, because you have the ability to spread kids out better. I love the fact that they talked also in this particular bullet about students being placed with some intentionality around social and emotional needs. So again, the more variety you have, the better your chances are of making a match that benefits both students and teachers. And in 27, we talked a lot about that opportunity to have just a greater pool of friends. Someone in the group Monday night mentioned that, by the way, our elementary students who are fully remote are mixed across 3 schools. So one of our remote teachers has kids from all 3 buildings potentially. And someone mentioned that kids made friends and realized that they would never have known that child if it wasn't for this opportunity, because there are 2 completely different elementary schools, even though they're in the same grade. So, those are interesting opportunities for our students to grow together from the very beginning. When kids come into kindergarten, and I say this as a former kindergarten teacher, the only thing they're interested in is a friend. They want someone to play with. They want someone to have lunch with, potentially to sit on the bus with or walk home with. They don't care about anything else at that age. That's all they're interested in. So we would, we embrace that. And while we understand the neighborhood schools, many of us grew up in neighborhood schools, we also see the opportunities that exist as kids are exposed to a broader group of potential friends.
Thank you. Does anybody have questions or comments about this slide? Lori?
You saw me on mute. Yeah, you know what? This is going to be a very difficult decision down the road. It truly is, because there's pros and cons, and we all know that, right? So my first thought was, well, there's not going to be a 5th grader to go down to read to the kindergartner, or there's not going to be the big buddy or the big sister or any modeling of older kids or any, that's what I was thinking. So many times you have your 5th graders go read to your kindergartners or do math with them, or go out and, who's going to referee or something like that. So I saw that missing right away. But like we said, there's going to be,
right.
We just have to.
You're absolutely right, Lori. And I do think that comes up, I think, in the threats, John. I'm not positive, but we did talk a lot about that. And, the remedy to that is intentionality. So you plan for those things to happen. They absolutely can continue to happen. And they almost start to feel like a field trip and get very special to have buddies across a school. But I'm pretty sure that, I don't know if it's on the list or not. I know we did talk about that Monday night.
It's on the list. Yep,
Okay.
It absolutely is on the list. And again, when you look at some of the threats, which that is clearly one of them, you try to ward off. What things can we do to stop that from being a threat? And that's where the action plan comes in. So we would say on that one, and I'm not advocating one way or the other here, we need to make opportunities throughout the year for students to have older role models to be buddies with, and to have opportunities for the older students to work with the younger students.
Allie?
But that can happen within a grade level or within a classroom of 5th graders. You have the opportunity to learn from your peer role models right in that classroom. So while it might be a threat, I think it's not a complete loss. I think there's opportunities within even a classroom that, I've seen my kid doesn't understand something, so he makes his own little Google Meet with a friend, and they're meeting together. So there's that learning and role modeling, and I think it's actually a strength and an opportunity.
Thank you. Anybody else? Comments, questions? All right, I think we can go on.
Okay, so I'll let you get a chance to read this and
All right, I'm going to kick things off by looking at number 30. Can you talk about how the transition is going to help with targeted reading groups? That sort of seems to be,
okay,
we're
so
talking about
I just
transitions and then not targeted reading groups and then back to being scary for students and parents.
yeah, so this is a facilitator's mistake here. So there should be another number in there. So there was a conversation that occurred about this particular topic. So there is one of the numbers in there that talks about when you move to the middle school coming from one school building, it's a better opportunity for the middle school to provide reading groups for targeted reading groups for those students. So where this went from was talking about the transition, right, and the ability to move with your peers, and you're doing it multiple times. So when you get to the middle school, you're not it's not as scary as it was if it was the first time you've moved. So that's the first portion of it. You should see another number up in here, and believe me when I tell you, I will be correcting this because it's going to drive me crazy. But clearly, in some of the opportunities, there's a list. I remember clearly where it talked about the reading group. So that should have been up there as well. And then the last part of it is really just what I first talked about. Is it won't be as scary for students and parents because they've had the opportunity to transition multiple times. So I think there's 3 numbers that should be up there, and unfortunately, I made a mistake and only put the 1.
Should be 16 as well, John.
Yeah, I don't want to. If I start pulling
No,
out
it
papers
is.
now, it's gonna. But
No, I'm
sure
telling you,
someone-
it's 16.
Oh, perfect. I can't see you speaking, but thank you.
It's Lisa. So
Thanks, Lisa.
Margaret, you're unmuted. Did you want to jump in or you're just unmuted by accident?
No, I didn't. I was going to say basically what John ended up saying, which was I think there's a couple of things in here that didn't, show up. I don't have my list in front of me, so I wouldn't have been able to tell you it was 16. So thank you, Lisa.
Yes. And then obviously the second one here talks about potential future opportunities for us in these different areas. And again, this is a combination of 6 and 7. And then the last one really speaks to, you're at the grade level and you have kids who are in kindergarten, first grade. So obviously assemblies can be geared towards them, but the language that you use in the building, whether it's code of conduct or how kids are addressed by the staff there, it's appropriate for each of the different grade levels. Any questions or comments about this slide?
I have a question. In terms of the innovation opportunities, you talk about the dual language. What would preclude that from happening if it's, why would that not happen? It is an opportunity in any situation, in any structure. So how is it better? Why is that, it reads like we wouldn't have it otherwise. Like it's an opportunity if we go this way. If we go to the Princeton plan, why couldn't it happen if we stayed in neighborhood schools?
Well, the reason that it's looked at as an opportunity, Mary Pat, is because it doesn't add staff. So right now we're taking staff away as we move to the Princeton plan. You could then say these 2 teachers that we would be getting rid of, we would be accessing, could now become our foreign language teachers, as opposed to staying the way we are and remaining in the position that we're in. We're definitely adding staff to do any of these items. It's not a substitute or a retrofit of FTE. It's new FTE.
I understand. Then what would be the purpose?
Thank you. The whole idea of this was saving money. A big piece of it was saving money. And if we're keeping people, and that the cost savings were going to be, teachers being, less teachers being accessed. So if we're keeping these teachers and just, just sort of redirecting them or having them reassigning them, then that money is not saved. So we are basically, it's just, I guess in this case, they would be saying giving them more opportunities, but, the kids, but it's not going to save us money. So again, a big chunk of the Princeton plan, the driver has been the cost savings. And now we're sort of like, cutting into the cost savings if we're talking about adding these. And trust me, I think these programs are lovely, but the whole purpose was to save money. And this sort of defeats, it lessens the amount of money we're saving, and it sort of makes the upheaval that we're going to see, again, it lessens the amount of money that's the whole argument here. The big chunk of the argument is saving money, and this changes that.
So let me just speak to that again real quickly. I apologize, but remember in the beginning I talked about this group was charged with what's possible. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. But what's possible if we move to this plan, right? It's not that it's impossible. And again, they're going to give you information. There's information in here that you have a decision to make. Now, if you choose to use what Margaret said and say, hey, listen, we can take some of our current money that we have available and make a dual language program at a certain grade level, right? You can choose to do that. You can also choose not to do that, because right now the main focus of the board is to really make sure that they keep the budget very tight. And but we don't want to go into this. We didn't want the group to go into this, say, hey, listen, we really don't want you to think that there's any possibilities of anything potentially in the future that you can look at if we were move towards the Princeton plan. So again, for the board, this is just information of what people are thinking, what was out there, and then you guys can pick and choose as you develop your action plan, the direction you want to move. And again, you have more information potentially about budget and future budgets and future taxes that are going to be coming on, and who knows what's going to happen in the district 5 years from now. But this document will live forever. So you could say, okay, 5 years from now, if the opportunity presents itself, we may be able to bring back some of these programs. Is there some ways that we can look at things currently with staffing and do the same thing with the current staff to bring some of these programs in, right? Can we work on developing the social studies and science programs with our current staff? That would be next year. Is there ways to work on STEAM? The answer to that is absolutely. May not be the main targeted area that you guys select, and may not necessarily involve taking away from your current savings by moving to the Princeton plan. That's completely the board's decision with the administration involved in that.
From what I understood from previous discussions, that if we wanted to do, say, a science program, I'm going to pick that one, because I'm a sciencey person, and it would be way more cost effective if we wanted to do a 4th and 5th grade science program if all of the 4th and 5th graders were in the same building than if we were trying to institute that same science program across 3 different buildings. Is that correct?
Question. Yeah, no question about it. Yeah, if you try to replicate it in all 3 buildings, it's going to be a staffing issue potentially.
Joe or Margaret, you want to speak to that at all before we move on? Or?
Yeah, I'll just, I think this all depends on, especially that specific topic, number 6 and 7 combined, speaks to what lens you're looking at it. We began this study by looking at it from a financial lens. What we know is that if we pick up our current model and reorganize in a Princeton plan model, we would have the potential. Let's say it's not a cost analysis. We're just looking at what would our staffing look like. Look at it from the lens of staffing. If we move to a Princeton plan with no financial expectation, as John said, dream a little bit. What could we do? What could we have? We would have 14 extra teachers. What could the district do by reallocating 14 additional teachers with having every single grade level at class sizes between 21 and 24, I think it was. So take the impetus off from, or take it away from looking at it financial and just look at it from an opportunity standpoint. And we had this discussion a few weeks ago where we said, part of the conversation among the committee is, okay, moving to the Princeton plan provides the opportunity to save a lot of money and keep our program the same. The Princeton plan also could provide an opportunity to save some money and enhance the existing program. And conversations I had with many committee members was, basically, sorry for the analogy, but what's the carrot? What's the carrot to convince me that reorganizing children and having them go to different elementary schools, how will their experience be different? What will they experience in the Princeton plan that they wouldn't normally experience at, you name it, school, grades K through 6 or K through 5? And that's where this conversation, how this conversation was generated.
Again, just for the little historical, when we started working with this group on the SWOT analysis, one of the things that I shared with them, as I mentioned earlier, was that the board went through a similar process when we talked about the closing of Indian Point. And if you think back then, you think, okay, we know what our strengths are as a district. We know what some of our weaknesses are. But how can we even look at this as an opportunity, right? Like we're going to lose so much money. How could we even come up with a list of opportunities? And I remember the board doing a really good job speaking about, hey, it's a chance for us to look at what we're doing, see if we can do it better, and continue to provide high quality education for all of our students. And you've done a wonderful job with that. And from that, when the action plan came, all right, let's look at our current programs. And that was the study that was done, I think, 2 years ago, looking at the current programs at all the different levels. So again, this is just, if you want to move in this direction, you can move in this direction, or you can choose not to. So again, I just think it's important to remember that these are just thoughts, but at the end of the day, the board and the administration are going to develop the action plan and implement it in the future.
All right, thank you. Anything else before we move on to threats?
Okay,
all right.
Next slide, please. Okay, so I'll give you a chance to read through them. So obviously the first bullet here speaks to the loss of staff, the potential impact it's going to have, because many people feel very highly, speak highly of your staff. They think they're wonderful. And as we all know, based on education regulations, right? You know, the last person in a particular department, maybe it has to be the first one to go if there's going to be cuts. So I think that some people were sensitive to that as we had this discussion. Obviously, when there's new teachers involved, you want to get them to learn about your district, and Margaret providing professional development. There's been a lot of resources invested in new teachers as they come on board. And then the last part of this is not necessarily that we're going to lose programs or lose course offerings. It's more about the shuffling of staff could impact programs and courses both at the middle school and the high school level. So I just want to be clear on that. Because some teachers who may be currently at the elementary level or the middle school level or high school level would have to be shifted in order to keep the programs going. And then the last one is no surprise. It ties into the transportation, and as you can see, the concerns there.
John, I just have a quick question on that 48.
Yeah.
So we had a long talk about this in the last
Corey,
meeting.
hang on. Enrique wanted to
oh,
say
sorry,
something.
Enrique.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I just want to make two comments about the impact on transportation. First of all is that our transportation aid will increase substantially. So there will be a savings in transportation. Number two, about the impact on the environment, Liz and I have been working very diligently in starting to look at electric vehicle buses. So even though today is still a threat, we're hoping that in the future we'll have a hybrid bus fleet.
And also, Enrique, if I remember the last time we talked about this, the wear and tear on the buses was negligible because we had our own maintenance crew, that there would not be additional oil changes or maintenance issues. That we were assured of that in the last meeting. So
Yes.
I'm not sure that this is quite accurate. Like I could understand like an increase in fuel, but we were talking $15,000 in total. And Liz assured us that there was no increase in wear and tear on the buses. So while I think it's going to be longer for some students, it's going to be shorter for others, depending on where you go. So, I know my kids, it's a 40-minute ride for them from where we are to the high school. So we've already got students who are going 40 to 45 minutes on the bus anyway. There were times where they were shorter. So I have a feeling it's going to, I don't know if the bus routes are truly going to be that much longer than they are right now. It's probably going to balance out over time.
I agree. I totally agree. I mean, and again, I think that the routes are short. They're going to be a little bit longer, but not more for 5 to 10 minutes. And definitely, there's going to be an increase in revenue for the school district. So, on and all, it's positive in that sense. Yes, some people today are in the bus less than 5 minutes. That at one point in their lives for 2 years will be 15, 20 minutes.
Yes.
That's a threat, but in general, I can tell you that from the transportation standpoint, everything is positive. We don't need more drivers. We don't need more buses. So we made the study, and from the transportation standpoint, I think that some of these threats will be mitigated.
And can you just re-explain for those who are listening in why we're going to be getting more transportation aid?
Sure, Corey. Today, we pick up certain students that live less than a mile and a half or a mile from their school districts. Any person, any student that lives within a mile or mile and a half of their school district, we don't get transportation aid. So now, for example, if today we have someone from Harper Avenue that goes to Frangie Lindsay, we don't get aid on that kid. But if that kid goes to Furnace Woods or goes to Buchanan, then we'll get the aid. So in that sense, it was an estimate of additional aid of about $150,000, if I'm not mistaken. If you take into account that our fuel costs will increase by $15,000, so we're up $135,000.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
This is the perfect example of, if you don't know the answer to the question, right? There's a fear of the unknown. So, I know the district has made many efforts to communicate exactly what Enrique has said to the community, but this is an opportunity once again for you to just, again, ward off against this threat. What can you provide to the parents in the community? They're going to say during your action plan development that we can have another meeting or have other ways to communicate to the community that this is particular issue that was identified as a potential threat, and I say potential on purpose, is not really a threat, as Enrique just explained. But there's obviously a perception out there that these are going to be issues.
Thank you. Can I just talk to the cutting of the staff positions?
Yeah.
That is, heartbreaking for everybody. We do sympathize with that if we end up having to excess people. And we do put a lot of time and energy and resource into our young teachers. We want them to feel comfortable in our school community, and we want them to be successful. And we hope that they have taken something out of that as well. So, we as a board also see that as a loss to our district. Don't think that we don't. The good news is that if we do end up having to lose teachers, that they do have the option to come back to our district, and they get first right of refusal if there's a position open for them. I don't know if Joe, you want to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, there are many different acronyms for it. One I'm familiar with is PEL, P-E-L, Preferred Eligibility List. Basically, if staff are laid off, they have the opportunity to return to a similar position. I believe they have a 7-year window to do that. So, we have been operating, as you've heard from our team before, being very transparent with staff, saying, okay, you may be one of the positions that could be reduced. No decision has been made. No decision will be made for a little bit, but we can help you gauge your options and walk them through the process. And I know that the teachers union leadership has been equally involved and has taken this on with a level of significance. But if staff are laid off, they do have eligibility to return up to 7 years to a similar position.
Thank you. I think Mary Pat, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I'm still, it's the transportation and the amount of time on the bus. I mean, I just, it says the impact, yes, the increased cost of fuel, wear and tear. I mean, I appreciate that we're going to get more money back from the state, but it's still going to cost us more to run these. And these children, I don't think you can, there's no way these kids are not going to be on the bus for 45 minutes. I mean, you think of, and we'll just take a third grader. Third grade, he's from Cortland Estates coming down to BV. That's 45 minutes. I mean, and and especially when you consider, pickups, drop-offs, pickup, throughout the trip, there's just no way that bus ride is not going to be 45 minutes. And, or even, that's a long time for a kid to be on a bus. And there's also the cost of, people to put on that bus, because mark my words, you get a kid on a bus for 45 minutes, you're going to need some, additional supervision besides just that bus driver. Just because kids, 45 minutes on a bus, they're going to get itchy, and, they're, whether it's morning, whether it's afternoon, there's going to be behavior issues. I see that as being, problematic. And I think it's important to highlight that is an issue for the kids. I mean, and I appreciate it's the next page and everything that it goes on to with the multiple drop-offs and start times, but those two, together, it's a huge increase, a huge problem for, any parent who's, whether one kid's homesick or, and mom has to, or dad has to, drop somebody else to school, or, the bus or whatever. I just think that's a significant issue to, in putting the kids on the bus for that much more time. And I do, again, and I understand the logic, but I do think that is something that is, that undermines this, this option, or is a, a negative in the, as we address this. And again, there is cost, whether we get it back, whether it's out of our pocket or whether it's out of the state pocket, there's additional cost, time and money. And again, putting these kids on the bus, if it's 45 minutes each way, that's an hour and a half a day. That's a lot of time for a little kid to be on a bus. And I see that as a, significant issue.
Thank you, Mary Pat. Does anybody else have any comments before we move on to the next point that Mary Pat gave us a preview on already?
Yeah, do we just have some average numbers of, how much it would increase for students overall? Because, it's for 2 years, right? They'll be in each building for 2 years. So it's not like they're taking that 45-minute ride for 5 years. They're taking it for 2 years, and then they might be at a school that's much closer to them that will be much shorter.
Think of the
So I'm
kids
just
going to
asking,
who live.
Mary Pat, let me just finish. Has anyone done an analysis of what the average increase in time on a bus would be for children overall?
So Corey, I can weigh in. Liz.
Oh, we had that, yeah.
Liz participated in a few Q&As with committee members 2 weeks ago, and a couple pieces of information we need first. First would be what grade levels would be assigned to which school and for which reason. And that every year bus stops and bus runs typically change because we have new kindergartners coming in, we have fifth graders leaving the elementary transportation system, and oftentimes we hear when bus stops change or bus routes change or bus drivers change, kids have had a certain route for a number of years and a certain time that they get picked up or dropped off, and that changes based on real-time data. We have a very complex software system that routes our buses. We can override that routing, but the routing takes two things in mind. Try to have the minimal time on the bus, because the longer that bus is on the road, we can't recycle that bus for the next tier of runs, right? So the transportation software system is aimed to have kids on the buses as less time as possible. Now, Liz can override that, and she uses small buses or vans to go in the different parts of our school district where buses can't go in and turn around. The analysis that she gave the group is going either way, from extreme to extreme right now, in terms of if you lived in Furnace Woods over by Hemlock Hill Farm, over in the Yorktown, Lakeland corner of our district, your bus ride today over to the high school, if you're a high schooler, averages between 30 and 40 minutes. If you live in the extreme part of BV, sort of up by the river on the Croton corner, and you're taking a bus to the middle school, your average ride time is 30 to 40 minutes, meaning the shortest ride is 30, the longest is 40. Now, there'll be some fluctuation in there again, based on which child needs to go to which school during that year. But that's a pretty solid analysis, because those are real kids today going to opposite sides. Now, depending on where kids live, what grade they're in, and which school they're going to, the transportation software may route them differently. You can get to, and I know this because I drive by your house on my way to work. There are times I can get to work quicker by going through Peekskill and coming in that way than driving all the way around Watch Hill Road. And the transportation software takes that into account based on literally where the kids live and where they need to go. So the rule of thumb that Liz gave us, and she has been working with one of our transportation consultants, a gentleman we work with regularly to help us tighten the belt and find new revenue, said that that's a pretty good marker. But a couple big decisions need to be made to finalize that and run bus runs for what the potential allocation of schools would be. We would need to determine which kids are in which school, and it all depends on where they live in the neighborhood and what school they're going to. But the 30 to 40 minute is today. Kids that go from one end of the district to the other is 30 to 40 minutes.
So we haven't done a mock-up making some assumptions that, all things being equal today, if we made this school these 2 grades, this school these 2 grades, and this school these 3 grades, let's say, this is the average bus ride, and we can't say that for sure then whether their rides would increase or decrease over time. Is that correct?
Correct.
We have not done that mock-up.
Not that mock-up. She feels comfortable with the numbers I just gave you, because those are the most extreme, right? So if I live in Furnace Woods or BV, and I'm going to Frank G, depending on the route and the number of kids, certainly it probably wouldn't be 30 to 40 minutes. It would be a little bit less, but that all depends on which children require a bus and what the school allocations are.
Yeah, but not every kid's doing 30. My point is, for the kids who do 30 to 40 minutes, it's less densely populated in those areas. So we might have fewer kids who are on that route, versus now if we're taking the densely populated areas, it would be good to understand how much more average time. Like when you do a traffic analysis, you figure, okay, if I'm going to fix this road, what's the average commute time for a person? How much will that increase or decrease based on the construction that I do? And then is it worth it, right? So it's kind of the same thing. If we haven't mocked this up, it's hard to make a comment as to whether or not it's going to make everybody, it could be that everybody's got shorter rides on average. We don't know, because we haven't done the mock-up, right? Or are we just saying in general, we know it's going to be longer?
We're using today's kids and neighborhoods they live in, and going over, basically crossing the district to going to schools close to the high school, BV, and again, depending on which way you go, and certainly your today's commute to the middle school is basically identical to Furnace Woods. So what would happen is the next step in this process, if we choose to move forward now or in a year from now or 5 years, is an analysis on saying, okay, what students should be in which school and why, and then Liz will be able to run some transportation studies. We purposefully didn't get that far because what grade levels are in which school shouldn't influence participation and feedback looking at the Princeton plan at the 30,000 foot level. Same reason we haven't, we begun the conversation with the 3 elementary principals, but are not in a position to assign them to certain schools yet, because those are decisions that shouldn't influence the process of whether or not the Princeton plan has merit.
But we're saying this is a significant enough threat, though, that it raised to the level of being on this slide. So I would think that it has to be a significant consideration for us, because it sounds like the time on the bus for kids is more important than the cost. The cost doesn't seem to matter because we're actually going to end up making money if that's the case. So, if Enrique, your theory is right, that we're going to have more kids who go beyond 1.5 miles, then in theory, all the average bus times are going to be a lot longer.
Yes, I'm sure. One goes
Okay.
with the other one, and that's what the study said. Obviously, if you are within half a mile from the school, that's the reason why we don't get state aid, because the state is saying that kid can walk. There's no reason for me to give aid to that district if the kid is so close to the school.
Right.
And remember, we are a suburban district. Just imagine if you go, up in upstate New York, they have one school, and just going to Arlington. Arlington it is the size of that district is all, I don't know how big it is, but it's at least 5 to 6 times bigger than us in area. And that's where the aid comes. The aid comes based on the size of the area, because upstate New York, that's what it is. You have one district for the size of miles and miles. We are suburban.
Yeah. So to reconcile the 2 points, if Enrique, you're saying that we're going to get 150,000 more in aid, then by default, that would mean that kids' bus rides have to be longer on average.
Yes. No question about it.
Okay. That's what I'm trying to get to, because I'm hearing mixed messages on this. There's no cost impact because we end up making money on it. But the kids, the evaluation is more about the subjective issue and the impact to kids on the longer bus rides.
And now,
but Corey,
like Joe said, this is looking at 30,000 feet. But if the board decides, well, we just made $150,000 more, we can add one bus and one driver, then maybe will be the same. We will have to make a study like that, but that's
we're not going to make that money. But we're not going to make that money. We're going to use that money to pay for the additional gas and the additional. No. So it'll be a wash. It'll be a wash. It sort of pays for itself in that regard. But that being said, every child, two-thirds of his bus rides are going to be longer, no matter where she lives.
No question about it.
That's what we were saying. I don't think
anybody's. But that's my point. It's like, and again, you figure, you talked about extremes. It's like any kid, though, wherever he or she lives, it's like that kid is going to wind up spending significantly more time. And again, the state aid is also not going to cover the cost of, potential for monitors or, and for monitors on those buses or the wear and tear on just, the bus drivers. I don't know how it's.
No, the monitors will. If we decide to put monitors, that will be part of our transportation cost, and we will be aided on that.
Well, I appreciate, yeah, okay, that's good, but the flip side of that too, but again, it's putting kids on the buses for that long, and I'm looking down the road, I'm looking at behavior issues, I'm looking at, the stuff that comes with that, and and just the, and again, is the driving around and maybe I'm looking at worst case scenarios, but you get a kid and the kid is going from BV to Furnace Woods and from even Cortland Estates down to Frank G. Lindsay. That's a significantly longer ride for those kids. And especially no matter what age group you put in there, there's going to be problems with that. And again, if you have kids that, the second graders at Furnace Woods and the fourth graders at BV, that's a problem, or Frank G or wherever, but it had two different schools, that becomes a problem for everybody, especially, the other piece of it, the mother connection piece. And, again, I think it's more than just the money. So I have some reservations.
I feel like we're talking about two different things. We're talking about maximal bus ride time and we're talking about average bus ride time. Now, you might be, if you right, Corey? So if you do the average, you might be averaging a bus ride going from 5 minutes to 10 minutes, but that's going to be an overall increase in average. And I think what I'm getting is that the community is really worried about maximal bus time. You're not worried about like a minimal increase in bus time. So not necessarily an overall average, but what is our maximal, our maximal bus time going to be for these younger kids?
Well, the maximal bus time is probably, it's not much different than a lot of our kids experience. Some of our kids experience now, not as many.
At the middle school level, not at the elementary.
At the middle school and the high school level, right. So it would start them earlier on some of that, but there will be points in their careers, their school careers, where they'll be closer to a school than they might have been. So it's not that you're not going to be, let's say you're in BV, you're going to be at the BV school at some point during all that. So the average bus ride over time sounds like it's going to increase, but it's not going to increase. That's why we're talking about average. I don't think the maximal matters as much, to be honest. I think it's the mean, because that takes into account minimum and maximum and average. I mean, unless we can find a median, which I doubt we're going to do here. But I just think of what Enrique is saying. If we're going to get 150,000 more in aid because of people living further from where they're going to school, by default, everybody's going to be taking longer bus rides. And I think that's what I'm trying to get at.
Okay.
Don't forget that 150 is still going to help pay the increased cost of fuel, the wear and tear on the buses, etc. So like Mary Pat said before, that would be a wash.
We talked about that last meeting, and there was virtually no impact on the buses. Right, we were talking about $15,000 in fuel and no impact on the wear and tear.
So if I may be so bold to jump in here, I think there's clearly some more information that needs to be gathered about the transportation. I think Joe just said a little while ago that he will start putting more pieces together. And one of the strategies that has been used is not to identify where the schools are and not, so that would make it hard to do a simulated run, for the different grade levels. So potentially in the future, if you want to get more information from Joe, you can charge him to do that, give you better statistics, right? And allow him to come back to the board. So it'll help you as you look to make this decision moving forward. But I think we're not going to solve this tonight, but clearly you need more information to make a better decision. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Shall we move on?
Yep.
Okay, so next slide, please. So again, take an opportunity to look through this. So the first one speaks to some of the issues that Mary Pat has already brought up. But again, having the potential for parents to have multiple drop-offs, school start time changes. And quite honestly, if you had 5 kids at all the different levels, that would be a major issue. But clearly that is a concern that has risen to this level. Now, again, the next one, I want to emphasize potential. I don't want to say it's going to happen, but there is a concern that there'll be some concern. There's concern about the way people are going to react to these changes, and putting students in the same buildings could cause some issues between students and families. And really, at the end of the day, it's more about trying to come up with the solves to make sure that that doesn't happen. So that's where you see the part in the bottom talking about some training and celebrating, respecting the differences and appreciation of the district's diversity. But there is a concern that when you have kids getting together that typically weren't in the past, there could be some issues that are brought up. Again, not just with the students, but also potentially with families. Questions, comments?
Seems like 2729 is almost mirroring one of the opportunities where kids that we saw before, where kids get to know each other earlier and have a bit greater appreciation of the diversity in our community. As often is the case, they're opposite sides to the same coin.
So again, look at this through the lens of, okay, if this is a potential, we just have to keep our eye out on it. And then what could we do in our action plan development that could be either watching for this to happen or put some things in place to make sure it doesn't happen.
I know the parents had some discussions with other schools about having different kids at different grade levels when there's Princeton plan. Were they able to talk to other parents and other districts about how they manage that and how their school districts manage that? Maybe we could get some information on that for our next meeting.
Sure, we can talk to Joe about that. Get that done.
Yeah, those were discussions that our folks had with the representatives from the other schools, and I know that you know, should we pursue those discussions and would continue as we identify best practice strategies to mitigate that threat.
And honestly, Carol, one of the challenges with those discussions were that the people who were at the table weren't necessarily there when the plans were implemented early on, so they really couldn't speak to the initial year or two of when it happened and what they had to go through, but they definitely spoke about that whole one community piece, and obviously they have to have certain things in place, as you would in any school, if there's any issues to come up, to have people help mediate the situation. But most of the people that we spoke to, if not all, were not there during the transition from the neighborhood schools to the Princeton plan and the districts.
I was talking more about the first one with the multiple drop-off times and start times.
Oh,
and those things,
okay.
The logistics of that. I'm sure that there are parents in those districts that have 3 kids in 3 different buildings or whatever, and maybe they could lend some insight into how that was handled.
They definitely spoke about that multiple times, and you know, one of the things that we heard over and over again is we just worked it out. We just learned to work it out. We worked either with our neighbors to help us out. You know, the district had put some things in place if there was an emergency closing, that there was communication, similar to, I'm sure, things that you do. And when they developed the school start times and ending times, they took into consideration this particular issue. But I think the way it was described to us is, hey, we just learned to work it out. And there's sometimes when there is potential for difficulties because of parents in New York City and can't get up there in time. And I'm sure the same is true in Hendrick Hudson, that the parent calls the district and they make sure that the child is okay until someone gets to pick them up. But for that particular one, yes, there was a lot of discussion around that.
Any other questions or comments about these 2 points? All right, let's move on to the next
slide. So Corey, this is the one I think I was talking about earlier on, that you'll get a more sense of the concern that people had about losing the 6 years of meeting with the students and the sense of community at each of the elementary schools. So if you lead through this, there's a number of things on this slide that speak to that.
Yeah, okay, this makes more sense. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's the sense of community I was thinking about in neighborhood was not just the students themselves, but it also includes the parents. And I think this comment focuses more on the students. And I think when we talk about neighborhood, we talk about everybody in the neighborhood. It's not just the students. Parents meet each other through the PTAs. and through, their local groups, and they can meet each other easily because they're all in proximity to each other. Like that to me is a sense of neighborhood that would be lost going to the Princeton plan.
Yeah, that was definitely brought up. Ironically, I think it was more brought up in that families would be making different friends from outside the neighborhood, which is also increasing potentially your pool of friends that you have, right? But clearly in this model, everybody's in the neighborhood, they're all bringing their kids to school at the same time. It lends itself to, with the current model, it lends itself to, those families becoming closer. And I think when they were talking about the Princeton plan, they would still have their friends from the neighborhood, but they would also make friends from other neighborhoods throughout the district.
So would it be
Families.
fair to say that that's both a threat and an opportunity that should be specifically called out?
I think it was called out during our initial conversations. There was there was people who thought that way, but it didn't rise to the level of the priorities on here as far as an opportunity, I don't believe.
I'm surprised. I'm surprised that I would, if people are saying, well, I don't want to lose my neighborhood, I don't want to lose my community. At the same time, you have an opportunity to meet people outside your immediate cohort group, right? You would think that one would go hand in hand with the other and would rise to the same level.
Right. We're all sailors. We're one big hen hood community.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Lisa, did you want to say something?
I was just wondering, the growth model there that's in quotation marks, what exactly is that? That's something
So
I'm
again,
sure.
I think Margaret may be able to do a better job after I'm done. But from what I understand is, Margaret, you want to jump on it?
I don't know, John, you can add to this because it may be that I just was never in this conversation personally and all of the rotations and the breakouts, but in education, the growth model for students is always talking about the possibility of improving, that a kid can always get better at something. You're not born smart, you're not born not smart, that you have the ability to get smart. So one of the things we always say to each other, and we teach kids to say to each other, is, I don't know the answer to that yet. So I don't know, I'm not sure what the group who coined the phrase in this particular response is referring to, because educationally, the definition of the growth model is what I just said. I'm not sure I think they were thinking that a kid is in a building for 6 years, and maybe they're thinking about the maturation and academic progress over 6 years. John, I was never with the people or the group that came up with this response, so I apologize.
No, don't apologize. In fact, you're almost spot on. I think what they're saying here on both the declassification rate and the growth model is, if the students are in the building for 6 years, I think one of the phrases that was used, where everybody knows your name, kind of like the Cheers thing, that the teachers, the administrators, everybody's working with this kid for a period of time and can work together to make sure that the child matures and grows academically to a level that's to their greatest level during those 6 years, right? So I think that's what it was, that you'd be missing that because they would be going to another school after 2 years, and there's really no continuity of the same people and people really understanding what that kid needs to be successful. So I think that's really where they were coming from.
Anybody else have comments about this slide? Allie.
To the point where disruption, most children see schools as a stable environment. Students may lose their sense of comfort and lack stability, which could lead to poor academic performance. I've heard this a lot. So I'm surprised it fell this low on the threats, because I just thought it would have been higher. In the next week, I would like to hear more, maybe from our school psychologist or an independent psychologist. Is this a perceived threat or is this a real threat? I think parents are worried about it. I would want to know if there's data behind it that shows one way or the other, if it's a real threat.
If this were a real threat, I'm surprised that there are so many school districts that do the Princeton plan, unless I'm misunderstanding it.
I don't think there's so many schools that do the Princeton plan.
No?
I don't believe there's a lot of districts that do it.
Allie, there is a reference to this in one of the studies that we posted on our website. I think it was from the Attleboro School District, perhaps, and they didn't do the research, but they did a meta-analysis of the research. So I think you can find some find some information on that report with regards to the transitions. What I will say is, because I was part of all 7 meetings with our committee members and parents from the other districts, what the parents from the 3 other districts said basically was a cautionary tale to not get so nervous about the transitions, that the kids are resilient, they figure it out, they do well, and to not let that sidetrack your efforts going forward. And that was one of the 10 questions I mentioned earlier that our groups asked the representatives in those 7 meetings from Somers, Ossining, and Terrytown, and that was consistent feedback across the 7 meetings from those 3 schools. But you know, it's nerve-wracking. So it's certainly a threat, and you know, should we choose to go forward, that would be part of the plan of trying to mitigate the threat.
Any other questions about this slide? Okay, we have one more slide with the threats. If we can go to that slide. And if you notice, there's double asterisks in front of this one. So if you went back to the slide but had the breakdowns from the different groups, one of the groups had 63 listed as their top reason. So the thought here was, as you go to read this, is that some of the groups would have changed some of their priorities and would have listed this higher if it was a definitive that the district was going to move in this direction in the fall of 2021. So had we come into this exercise saying that first goal, the district is looking to move to the Princeton restructuring to move to the Princeton plan in the fall of 2021. My understanding was from the group that this would rise to the level of the top of the major threats, and potentially even change some of their other things that they would be concerned about as they were listing out their top 5 choices. So that's why the double asterisk is there. I just promised the group that I would share that information with you. So again, this is about the timing and some of the things that they feel could be potentially impacted if we tried to do this in the fall of 2021.
Thank you. Questions, comments? All right.
I think Lori raised her hand. I can only see Lori. She's one of my 4 I can see. So.
You know what? The big one is 67. And this is what Corey was talking about before with Enrique, to do a side-by-side, because originally when we heard, we talked about 14% increases. And now we found out that they're going to be between 4 and 6, if I am correct. And to actually have that comparison of what our taxes are actually going to be, with going with the Princeton plan, not going with the Princeton plan. Is it really going to be that much? I know for some people, any amount is too much. I understand that. But actually to see the numbers, and I know Joe said that he's going to take care of that. So I really think that those are important numbers to see, especially maybe over the next 9 years, since our cessation is for 7 years, right? Is that correct? I think that's really important for people to actually see that comparison.
Yeah, thank you for highlighting that, Lori.
Right, because we also came from a time before Cuomo did our 2% thing where we actually had 5 and 6% increases. And not too many people blink their eye, and I think that's too high, to tell you the truth. But let's just see what that money is, because I know my taxes are very, very high.
Well,
so I would appreciate that comparison. Oh, Enrique, I don't even know if you were in on that conversation, to tell you the truth. Can you do that, bud?
Not now, because I'm at home and I don't have.
No, I don't mean right this second.
No, not for tonight.
Oh, no, that's service. All right.
Right now, Enrique, let's go, bud.
Again, there's a couple of things that I need to mention, because when the board makes a decision, it's important to know what happened last year. Last year, our increase was 5.9%. I got at least 30 calls saying, why are my taxes this high?
One was from me.
Exactly. And out of those 30, I will say at least there were 5 that said, I didn't understand. If I had knew, I would have voted no. So I just want to be very careful that people don't pay attention until they pay attention. And the problem is that it's not that the difference between Princeton and leaving it as it is 2.5% per year over the next 5 years. Just to say numbers, and that's, I want to make it clear that I'm just giving numbers without having it, and that's not the numbers that will be at the end. But just for the sake of it, 2.5%. It's not like it's only going to be 2.5%. It's going to be 5% or 7.5%. So we're not talking, well, let's be 1 or 3.5. We're talking big numbers, even with the Princeton plan. We're talking numbers of 4 to 4.5 to close to 5% with the Princeton plan. That means that with the other one, with staying as it is, we're talking about numbers between 6 and 7%. And I don't want to scare the board or the community, but if any of those 7 years, we have to go into contingent, we'll have to cut about $3 million out of our budget. And to cut $3 million is to cut between 30 and 35 teachers out of 255. That's how decimated the district will be.
I think what Lori's asking for is just the incremental difference. I mean, understand the 5% is almost, 4 or 5 is the increase. He wants to know what the difference is if between the 5 and 7 or between the 4 and 6, what that would be on a dollar, for like your average house or, again, if we wind up with the Princeton plan, what that dollar difference will be on each household if we have one versus the other. I think that's what Lori was asking.
Right. Enrique, someone had mentioned before that you were trying to come up with some kind of like tax calculator, like we have a mortgage calculator.
Yeah.
That would be very helpful too, so people can.
Again, unfortunately, I'm not at work, so I cannot bring it up. I could do it.
Yeah, no, not for tonight. Not for tonight. We'll discuss this later. It's okay. Joe, Joe and Enrique will discuss this, and we'll get it together for next time.
Yes.
But I think that would be very, very beneficial if we put it on the website so people could type in what they're getting. And I don't know. I just think people seeing that number, like Corey had mentioned before, I think is a really good visual for them.
Yeah. We can do it this week. So anyone that is interested can go to the website and look at his tax bill, see what's their tax assessment in, put it there, and they'll know the amount.
Can I just add one question, Enrique? You made a comment about going to contingency in Princeton plan. How is that different from our risk profile right now? Wouldn't that be the same situation if we had to go into contingency now? We would still have to do the same kinds of cuts?
No, Corey, because again, the difference is contingency is based on the budget. So if my budget under consistency, under status quo, is $2 million this year more than my budget under Princeton, then those $2 million, I have to reduce them against contingency that they are not there in the Princeton. So if you remember last board meeting, I said our increase if we do Princeton is $700,000. If it's status quo, it's about $2.5 million. So if we go to Princeton and we're in contingent, I only need to cut 700,000
for the first year. But if
Yeah,
we,
well,
in the
we're
second year of
only
Princeton
for a
plan,
year.
but
Contingent
this,
is only for a year.
right, so the second year, so if we went in contingent, the second year of Princeton plan, then it's the same risk profile that we have right now.
Oh, yes, but with much lower numbers to have to cut, because that $2 million, I will not have to cut it.
So it would be a percentage of that 2 million that you wouldn't have to cut. So it might be an extra 200,000, let's say, that you wouldn't have to cut.
A lot less. I'll say instead of having to cut the 3 million that I mentioned, maybe we only have to cut 1. But yes, when there's contingent, you always have to cut compared to the last year.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yep.
Greg, I think the last slide is just more questions and comments, but I would like to end my portion here just again to thank that stakeholder committee, because they really did some great work, and again, just superstars, and they just really, it was enjoyable working with them, and I hope to continue to work with them in the future, but really a great group. So thank you very much to them.
Yes, thank you. You can tell from the comments and the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that they came up with, that they really dove deeply into this subject and really took it seriously. So again, thank you very much for your time and effort on the committee. It's going to really help us tremendously in making this decision. Anybody have any last minute comments or questions before we move on to our audience comment section?
If at all possible, I'm going to say it again, and you could say the same response. I still think that we should do a community survey. It doesn't cost anything. You send it out, they answer it. It's one response per email. I just think, you know what, if people aren't paying attention after all this, because we hear a lot of stuff that people don't know what's going on, but I think the communication has been overwhelming, to tell you the truth. So people need to pay attention, but I think a community survey would still be a very good idea. That's it.
The communication, just to highlight, Lori, the communication though has only come from people within the school district. It has not come from people outside. I've not received anything, besides, as a parent whose child has left the district, I haven't gotten any notification about this. I think the key is there needs to be the inclusion of information and input from the people who have either left the district or are coming in who don't have children in the district to get a complete picture.
Thank you. Bill?
How much of this is going to be put on the website? Like, I know there was, John had referred to the detailed strengths and weaknesses that support the presentation. Is the presentation and the detailed details going to be put on the website, or is it just the presentation is going to be on the website?
Yeah, Bill, the presentation's on the website now as it's part of board docs, but what we'll do is we'll archive it on our cost analysis / Princeton plan webpage, and we'll also include the detail that John mentioned in terms of all of the feedback from the stakeholder committee that led to the prioritization of what you heard tonight.
Okay, so I know the board has given heavy consideration to a lot of those comments that are on there. I think the board was not surprised by many of those. It's things we had thought about already, but I think the people who are new to this, some of these comments are going to be quite valuable. So, it's good for them to be able to see the detail beyond what we talked about tonight.
Okay, so I think we're ready to move on to our audience comment section. Before we start the audience comment section, I would just like to inform the public that we are getting a lot of emails, which is great. We read every single one. And if you would like to send an email to the whole board, you can just type in boe@henhudschools.org. And that sends your email to all of the board members and to Joe at the same time. In many instances, it's actually easier for us to get those emails so we have a chance to read them and really digest what you're saying. If you do want to make a public comment that is entered into the public record, there are guidelines for doing that on board docs. And usually what you have to do is email those to Carmen, who's our district clerk, let her know that you want those read at the board meeting. They will then be entered into the public record as well. Comments should not be any longer than 3 minutes, only one comment per person, please. And we do limit the number of comments that we can do in an evening so that it's not a 3-hour comment section. But again, if you want us to read your comments, please email them to us. We are happy to read them. We would invite input, please. We're getting a lot of emails and would like to see even more from the wider community. So I know that we do have comments for this evening. Lisa will be doing the timing for you, Carmen. And as I said, we're going to stick to the 3-minute rule, but any comments that you do start reading that go over the 3 minutes will be part of the public record, so the public can read them afterwards if they would like.
Good evening, everyone.
Carmen, your audio just cut out. Oh, you're back.
Am I back? All right. Sorry. Okay. I'm just trying to position myself so I can read these. Okay. So the first email that I'm reading is from Christine DiLoretto. Hello, Mr. Hochreiter, Board of Education. I'm writing to express my concerns regarding the recent communication in reference to the Princeton plan and obstacles outlined in an email to the Stakeholder Committee. Specifically, I would like to address losing some of our teachers and the frequent change in support staff. Potential loss in our special education and reading instructors is very alarming as a parent of a special needs child. Having been in the district 6 years, my son and I have had the opportunity to work with teachers such as Melanie St. Pierre, Kristen Johannes, Darren Mance, Anne Marie Flynn, and many others, and I would consider it to be devastating impact to the advancement and support required of your entire student body. These teachers have not only been a resource for our IEP and 504 students, but also the mainstream students in their classrooms. Additionally, I have been informed many times over the years that there have been an inadequate coverage of special education teachers when there are absences, planned and unplanned, resulting in having no special education teacher present during all of his integrated co-teaching classes as legally dictated by his IEP. Therefore, the thought of reducing the staff even more is unsettling. The obstacle of frequent changes in their support staff for our special needs children will also lead to significant risk to their progress. Consistency, routine, and predictability is the basis of emotional and social development. Consistency offers comfort and security and is a fundamental building block for secure relationships, learning, and emotional regulation. The lack thereof will create anxiety and will have long-term detrimental effects. As a parent of a child classified and with a learning disability and behavioral, social, and emotional delays, I've seen this confidence build in himself in the Hendrick Hudson School District, knowing he has the commitment and stability of his teachers. The thought of frequent changes is preposterous. Although I am concerned for my son, the thought of a single child losing the support of these teachers should be the #1 concern by the Board of Education and should be reconsidered. I strongly urge you to vote against the Princeton plan. The consequences of this change will short our students of the adequate educational experience for them to be prepared to graduate and be successful. Finally, the thought of losing my son's reading teacher, Mrs. St. Pierre, would be damaging to not just my son, but a major loss for me. Ms. St. Pierre has been an advocate for her students. Her communication has been hands down the best of my experience, and her thoughtfulness and dedication is unparalleled. The result I've seen in my son by working with her at FGL and now in the high school is remarkable. Thank you in advance for your consideration. Christine DiLoretto. Okay. The next email came in from Elizabeth Perry. Hello all. Please find the attached letter I would like to present, read aloud on behalf of the Board of Education. Okay. On behalf of my family, I'm writing this letter to express support of the implementation of the Princeton Plan for the Hendrick Hudson Union Free School District. I grew up in a community that had the Princeton Plan. I feel that this model embodies a sense of community and not one division. I feel it is the HHUFC-SD approves the Princeton Plan, it will bring us together as a community. Something is so needed during these times for our children. Our children are all brought together for middle school, Blue Mountain, so why not bring them together sooner? This gives our children the opportunity to create bonds during their elementary years. For example, both my daughters attended a local preschool and created such great friendships during these impressionable years to only be divided based on their address. I don't think this is right to do to our children when we should be teaching them love, respect, and acceptance. This has been a year of challenges and flexibility for administration, faculty, parents, and children. I feel that our Hendrick Hudson Union Free School District community will rise to the challenge of one more change in the best interest of all children if this model is approved. Thank you for your time and consideration. The next email came in from Peter Hillman, and they want me to read the attached letter. Dear Mr. Hockray and Board of Education members, we are writing to express our concerns with the upcoming Princeton Plan vote, which we can understand could take place as early as the end of this month. We'd like to see the option of transitioning to the Princeton Plan model taken off the table for immediate future. Next year should be the focus on the social and emotional needs and well-being of students, families, and staff, as well as we hopefully reopen schools in a more normal way. Nothing about this school year was normal, and nothing about the reopening in 2021-22 will be. Our focus as a district during the next school year must be on rebuilding and recovery, not complete and total systems change. We have concerns about the lack of information provided about many aspects of the logistics, new system requirements, and improved communication that will be necessary.
Sorry, Carmen?
Yeah, I was just gonna say,
We're having
Carol, go
trouble
ahead.
hearing you. I think you're moving away from your microphone.
Oh, sorry. Okay. We have concerns about the lack of information provided about many aspects of the logistics, new system requirements, and improved communication that will be necessary to successfully implement the Princeton Plan model in this district. These concerns include what data management system will be in place to track social and emotional behavior and academic supports across the many different schools that each student will attend over the course of their academic career. What are the costs of this data management system? What is the evidence that has been used to ensure the system is appropriate and the administration are adequately prepared to use the system? What systems are in place to ensure prior and proper planning of events, back to school nights, parent-teacher conferences, etc., that will need to be coordinated when families have children in multiple buildings? What systems will be implemented to support students each time they move to a new school? For example, pre-visits to schools carried out in June to ensure that the move is not socially or emotionally overwhelming. How much will the physical moving of faculty, staff, admin, and equipment cost? How much will improved facilities for each school cost? For example, smart board heights vary between grade levels and appropriate bathroom accessibility by grade level, etc. What will transportation, childcare, start times look like for a family that has children in 3 schools now instead of 1 school? Since joining the school district a year and a half ago, the lack of communication and open engagement with the community exhibited by the administration of the district has stood out to us as an area of concern. While there has been communication about projected savings and equity that may result from moving to the Princeton Plan model, we would like to hear more about how Princeton Plan model offers equity in a way that no other school or district structure could. We have not been provided any other options. We agree that focusing on equity is important, but we believe there are many other ways that this could be addressed. The main theme of the district's communication seems to be the savings. This
Time. It's been 3 minutes.
Okay. Sorry, I said take a drink. Okay, so the next email came in from Jennifer Monks-Bacher. To the Hendrick Hudson Board of Education. As I prepared to write this letter, I tried to think about our district's mission. I reread it over and over. It's quite powerful. Our mission is to provide a dynamic, innovative, and supportive educational community, and to ensure each student is an engaged, passionate learner who achieves his or her maximum potential. The truth is, we are and have always been a district divided into 3 separate elementary schools, each one offering a similar but different learning environment. But I know and believe we are all sailors. Our children all attend and graduate one high school, which is in the cornerstone of our community. It can be seen every day over social media and amongst your youth that we support each other, whether it be fundraising for those in need for supporting our school's theater and athletic events. Our community rises to the occasion. So while the Princeton Plan model has been presented to us as a means of saving money, I urge you all to rethink that this model offers so much more to our learners. It removes the divides created between community elementary schools and aligns us as one district. It provides our children a group level learning environment where they move from school to school with their peers. It allows all students to engage in the same programs appropriate for learning levels. It nurtures our children in developing the life skill of enduring change while under the watchful eye of our supportive and educators. It promotes our diverse community while providing an equal education to our children. While I understand there will always be the population of people who believe that the way it is good. Is good enough? Is this the best way we can offer? Is this the best we can offer our children? Each year, our children learn in new ways, using new technology that rewrites what education is or was. Common Core math had been questioning every math skill I ever learned in elementary school, until one day I realized my 3rd grader no longer memorized her multiplication tables, but understood them. May I remind you, no one wanted Common Core. The truth is, our children are more innovative and resilient than we can imagine. They teach us more than we can teach them. I don't believe I need to provide the data we all know is real and true, that we are a diverse community, segregated by our beloved community elementary schools. As a graduate of this district, I can assure you this is not a new topic. The divides were there back in the 90s, but I believe we are stronger a district now, and we are different parents than ours. The demographics of our community and our world are changing. Are we really doing justice to our children? Are we truly preparing them for life, or are we sheltering them in hopes the next generation is stronger than us? Will they be more willing to make necessary changes to our school district and just to ensure the legacy we stand behind? The Princeton Plan is change. It is different, and maybe scary, but is needed. Very true, Jennifer Barker. Okay.
Thank you, Carmen. Take a breather for a minute. Let me just mention that we have some upcoming community meetings, question and answer sessions. The board comment section is not a question and answer session. I know there have been some questions asked here. The dates are on the website, so please check those out and join us for those question and answer sessions. Thank you.
Okay, hi. On to the next, it came in from Stephanie Hickey. Her comment is, the district organized an elementary organization task force study in March of 2000. Below cons were addressed by the task force study. The district decided against the reorganization plan in 2000 because of the below cons. Wouldn't the Princeton Plan create the same cons that are listed below? If the district decided against reorganization in 2000 because of the below cons, why are the cons acceptable now? How much money will the average person be saving in their school tax bill if we go to the Princeton Plan? Is it $12 a year, $50 a year, $100 a year? Please use the current median home value of $450,357. I'm looking for a real number here, not the district's cost analysis estimates of $1 to $2 million. COVID is having a devastating impact on children. Kids need consistency more than ever. Making this change next year will be detrimental to kids' mental health. It is irresponsible for the district to push through this massive change during a pandemic. With so many unforeseen variables, why not wait until September 2022? So the cons of 2000 task force study. Larger grade level meetings can be less productive. Continuity of programs may be an issue if different methodology is utilized. The smaller number of grades in each school, the more transitions students will need to make. Transitions can be stressful. It is better to have at least 3 years in one building. For example, it is better to have at least 3-year span, such as K through 2. No K through 5 community. K through 5 continuity offers a healthy perspective to seeing a child as his or her family for more than a couple of years. Older kids working with younger kids is great bonus. Maybe difficulty to obtain a larger range of grade level ability material, cost for renovation of buildings to accommodate age-specific classroom requirements. Childcare problems may occur during the different time schedules. Loss of neighborhood schools can cause breakdown of parental support, create the potential for increased class sizes. Students from a large population may be unable to sustain long-term friendships with peers due to much larger administrative choices for class placements. Okay, so that's the end of that email. I'm going to move on to the next email. The next email came in from Devin Moore. I'm writing to express my concerns about the Princeton plan and request that this letter be read during tonight's Board of Education meeting. I have one daughter in 2nd grade, currently remote, and will be entering 3rd grade next year, plus twins entering kindergarten in September of FGL Elementary School. Elementary Princeton Plan Stakeholder Committee information states, siblings may not be together in the same school, which means parents are affiliated with 4 or more schools at once. This applies to my family, as at this time I am unsure if my child will take the bus or be dropped off, picked up. Question, will drop-off pickup times be staggered or ensure timeliness? How will school schedules be determined? Projected loss of 14 teachers, potential to add science, STEAM classes, concern question. I feel that this may negatively impact the quality of students' education, especially those receiving special education services. If projected loss gets implemented, then how can the school district ensure it will have enough teacher staff to add this class? How will this impact the enrichment program? Will services such as speech therapy be reduced or eliminated? Flexibility in scheduling students, enrichment, remediation, specials, and lessons. Question, what would this entail? Would you provide an example of schedules for all grades once they are created? Additionally, the timing of implementing Princeton Plan raises concern. This pandemic has affected many in different ways. It seems that Princeton Plan itself will come from a number of changes. I'm concerned about the mental well-being of students. They have had enough to deal with in light of the pandemic, and I feel the Princeton Plan if the Princeton Plan goes into effect in September 2021, I recognize that it could also go into effect September 2022, is too much change for them. For students with special needs issues, my thoughts are with them. Plus, I feel that it would take more time to efficiently plan for such change. In short, I am not in favor of implementing the Princeton Plan. However, if implemented, it is my hope that parents will receive timely communication throughout the planning process and it doesn't start too soon. The next email that came in was from Rena Spada. I hope this email finds you all well. Please note I am writing this email in response to the upcoming decision on implementing the Princeton Plan in our school district. I've been reviewing the financials and have viewed the meetings, and although I'm not strongly for or against the Princeton Plan and exploring our options, especially with Indian Point shutting down, I do not agree that the 2021-22 school year is the year that it should be implemented. We need to focus on fully reopening all our schools, middle school and high school included, come September 2021. As with many families across our district, the state and nationally, the ramifications of our children being out of school, isolated and in front of screens all day, are far more detrimental to their psychological well-being than, God forbid, contracting COVID. We need to focus our efforts on the safe return of our students and staff to our buildings than to restructure what we currently have in place. I understand the financial strain this year has put on the district, and I know what Indian Point's shutdown will do to our taxes. We have to concentrate on how to get back to normal for the sake of our children. Thank you, Rena Spada. The next email came in from Ron Goldman. To the elected representatives on the Hendrick Hudson School Board, I want to inform you on behalf of a group of Hen Hut parents, there is a new petition circulating calling for the board to say no to the Princeton plan for 2021-22. Further, it calls for a delay any vote on such a plan for 2022-23 until more work and studies are complete and the community at large can be better educated and informed regarding the actual plan should it be implemented. As of the time of this writing, there are 275 signatures and the petition has been published for only a day. It is our intent to deliver this petition with all signatures and comments to the board for the meeting planned for the March 17, 2021. Next email came in from Nancy Henning. She sent in 2 emails. We're going to just read one tonight, but the other ones will be put into the board minutes. Conversations around the Princeton plan have been largely theoretical, with absolutely no detailed plan laid out for exactly what that change would look like, which school would house their children, what are the school modifications required to support that, what is the transportation plan. Additionally, it is being heralded as an answer to our achievement gap issues between our elementary schools, but with no facts on the root causes of this gap. So how can we know whether this will address the issues? At a time when other districts have voted against Princeton plans, some even shifting their models back to the community-centered schools with the goal of improving academic achievement, why are we still considering this dated model as the answer to our problems? If we are perceiving it as a financial solution to the gap left by Emily Point, I asked, what is the plan for the other $22 million? This is hardly a drop in the bucket. If we are perceiving it as a solution to the achievement gap issue between our elementaries, I ask what is the root cause and how will this fix it? We need clear, transparent, authentic communication between the school board and the community on a topic of this magnitude. We need to believe the Board of Education is acting solely in the best interest of our children and their educational development. I'm just going to take a drink of water for a second. Sorry.
Carmen, you're doing great. Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you for reading all of these.
Okay, one more. Well, there's a couple more. The next one came in from Jennifer Martino. Hello, I'm forwarding my thoughts about the PP to read about the Princeton plan to be read at the meeting. Thank you. Since having a child at Furnace Woods School, my husband and I have grown to appreciate the community feeling of the school and the tremendous support and the dedication of the teachers and staff. Keeping our current school structure offers multiple benefits that help to promote academic success for elementary students, including stability, long-term relationships, development of multiple adult mentors for children, and a strong sense of belonging to a school community. We have seen this already, and my son is only in first grade. As an educator, I know that consistency is vital for student success in the classroom. Children who are enrolled at the same school for multiple years come to understand what to expect without having to adjust to a new principal, nurse, drop-off routines, special teachers, etc. every 2 years. This allows them to focus on their new teacher and a curriculum of increased demand at the start of the school year, which can improve the likelihood that they will have positive social, emotional, and academic outcomes. In this model, students also have the opportunity to maintain relationships with previous teachers who they feel most connected with and can find them when they need support, advice, or friendship. The relationship between students and caring adults is a crucial component of student learning and social and emotional health. Since transitioning young students every 2 years is the greatest challenge the Princeton plan presents, careful attention would have to be taken to familiarize students through school visits, shared activities, and teacher planning. Given the financial states of the schools, it seems unlikely that there are funds allocated for hiring a consultant to come in and help with the restructuring plan. The notion of making this transition during a pandemic is unreasonable. Children, teachers, and staff have been through so much over the past year. Think of asking them to reorganize, adjust, and rethink what they have already had to do in the past year is unfair and is unlikely to be successful. Given that the district has been given additional funds recently, It would be more beneficial to take the next couple of years and design a plan that will allow a smooth transition. If the Board of Ed does approve the Princeton plan, in addition, we don't know what the 2021-22 school year will look like. How could the Board of Ed approve a restructuring plan to begin in September if we are unaware of CDC guidelines for our schools? The Princeton plan model projects class sizes of up to 26 students in a room. I assume that is not even an option given our children will not be vaccinated. When would staff development occur for teachers so that they could thoughtfully come together and form a cohesive unit, considering they are coming from their 3 different buildings? It was noted that one benefit of the Princeton plan would be increased opportunities for collaboration within the grade, along with...
Time is up.
Okay. All right, so we did receive some emails during the board meeting as well tonight, and let me just get over there to them, and I'll read those aloud as well.
How many were received during the board meeting?
I think it was
time limit on this,
I think it was 3.
Okay, let's do the 3. Go ahead, Carmen.
Okay, I have to pull it up on my computer.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I have to pull it up. So sorry.
That's quite all right.
All right, so hold on a minute. The one email came in from the BMS PTA. So let me pull it up here. Dear Board of Education Trustees of the Hendrick Hudson School District, this letter is to address possible and proposed budgetary cuts for the 2021-22 school year. There have been many conversations in recent years about how Hendrick Hudson School Board of Education has a fiduciary responsibility to its stakeholders. But let's not forget the duty we all have towards the educational, social, and emotional needs of our students. The proposed cuts come at a time when they will have long-lasting and unknown impacts on our students for many years to come. We need to ask ourselves if now is the right time to cut when our students need more support than ever. 5 of the Hendrick Hudson PTAs request the following on behalf of the majority of our members. We ask that any consideration of the Princeton Plan model in September 2021 be tabled for now. The overwhelming feedback we have received from our members is that the timeline to begin in the fall is too soon. Add to that the endless unknowns of what September will bring and the logistics of such an undertaking during a pandemic. There seems to be no other answer than to wait on this monumental change for now. To be clear, we are not asking that you table it entirely, just that time is given to appropriately plan for it. We request that the switch to the indirect, lastly, we ask that no staff cuts be made at the Blue Mountain Middle School or Hendrick Hudson High School. This is in reference to the possibility of cutting a team of teachers at BMS, since there have been no significant change in the student population. There's no reason for this huge and impactful change at this time. We know when all students return to school full-time, they will need all the support we can provide them, and smaller class sizes will ensure students have all the tools necessary to help them thrive in coming years, when school at the advanced secondary level gets even more difficult. This staff change will impact both general education and special education students. Our Hendrick Hudson Middle School and high school students have lost hours of instructional time this year due to the pandemic. Add to the loss of instructional time to our elementary students in the spring 2020, we expect that even our most successful students will need additional one-on-one time and extra support from staff in all subject areas, as well as AAS and special education. Cuts to staff at each school should set them up to fall even further behind. We cannot risk this for our students. We ask you to consider our requests on behalf of our students and families. It is the responsibility of the Board of Education to ensure all the Hendrick Hudson students have the opportunity to exceed, whether that be socially, emotionally, or academically. These cuts limit those opportunities for all the students from elementary through high school. Okay. The next email that came in tonight was from Paul Pereira. Dear board members, as a professional in the business, we look at trends and success our peers, competitors. We look at them to be hopefully learn and make improvements in our own organization. It is impossible to learn of the success stories of districts who have transitioned over the Princeton plan. Unfortunately, I only know of districts in our surrounding areas who have transitioned to the Princeton plan over 30 years ago. Are there any districts who have more recently transitioned, and are there any metrics you can share that would help us see the success? I'd like to see metrics supporting academic, social, and program success. I'd also like to see a comparison cost savings versus the districts in real dollars as well as a percentage. Also, are these repeatable savings year over year and not just one-time event? Another email that came in from Lindsay Curry. In response to the discussion on transportation and change in bus ride times, I think it is important to mention that every BB zone student rides the bus to BMS, and this has not been an issue in the past. There are bigger conversations to be had. And another comment came in from Sabrina Pereira. So she said, dear board members, I would like to clarify a comment from earlier in the meeting. FGL has been sailors for the last 5 to 6 years. I've been part of PBIS committee for the last 14 years, and we have transferred over to sailors years ago. Fellow staff members and myself met with the district and presented the idea for all the elementary schools to change together and unite. Unfortunately, it did not happen, and only FGL transitioned to sailors. We let go of our Lindsay Lion and started the Big Henry. We changed our Lion Pride to Sailor Pride. We are already part of a sailor nation. As for the outside of the building, that is up to the district. I believe there are brand new doors being installed as we speak, and they are red. Thank you for your time. Okay, those are the ones that came in during the meeting tonight.
Thank you, Carmen, and thank you to the community members for your comments. Again, you can email us. We're happy to read your emails, and if you feel strongly about this issue, now is the time to do that. Get in touch with us. There will be community question and answers. The PTAs are running forums as well, where Mr. Hochreiter and other administrators will be present to answer questions. So please, please, please stay informed, ask the questions you want answered, let us know your feelings. And I think that wraps up our meeting. So can I get a motion?
Sorry.
Sorry.
No,
Pat, go ahead.
Sorry. Can you just mention the fact that there are board seats up? Because
thank you for reminding me. Yeah, thank you for reminding me.
Coming upon to get those conditions in.
Yes, thank you for reminding me. There are 2 board seats that are up for election this year. Contact Carmen if you are interested in running. If you go on the website under the board drop-down list, there is a whole section on how to run for the board, what a board trustee experience is like, links and information on all of those important items. Okay, so yes, there are going to be 2 board seats up this year. I don't know how many incumbents are running or not, and I don't know how many petitions are out there already, but if you're interested in running, please do so. Does anybody else have any comments? Or I guess I'm sorry, I missed the board comment section in my haste to try to close the meeting. Board comments and new business.
I just have 2 things. I want to, I don't know if anybody knows, but I want to congratulate Nick Hiltzley. He's one of our 3 kids who got 1,000 points for our varsity basketball team. And I happen to love that child. So congratulations to Nick. And there was another thing we had discussed last week about, I guess this might be in a principal update too. We were talking about the number of seniors who are struggling, like what are we doing for them? Do we have any type of recovery classes or something like that? Some parents had reached out about that too.
Yeah, I can answer that real quick, Lori. That's part of the calculus in bringing back students 5 days a week, and if we need to scaffold in who comes in when, meaning we have to phase them in because we're waiting for some of the dividers. There has been conversation that perhaps we would start with the seniors for two reasons. One, make sure we catch them up to make sure they're graduation eligible, but also to, let them have some time in their building during a bizarre last half of their educational career. We also have been starting discussions with both the middle school and high school about some sort of skill building. I mean, we call it summer school, but not summer school from I failed a class, I need to retake it,
Right.
but identify students who really, really struggled and have skills gaps. So both the middle school and high school are working with their respective teams to identify what type of kid, what type of criteria we would look for to have certain students come in for in-person, small group tutoring, skill development to help make up for some lost time and to make up for an instructional model this year that might not have been ideal for them. So all of those options and remediation and support networks are on the table. And it's just a matter of identifying those kids. What we do want to have is we want to have a few weeks of experience with kids being in 5 days a week. Well, first, let's see if they come in 5 days a week, right? There still are many, many students who are not attending in person for many, many good reasons. And just because we're opening it up from 2 days to 5 days a week doesn't mean that everyone's going to come every day. But we also want to give those kids that are struggling some experience to catch up during the instructional day and then determine what sort of summer wraparound program they may need. But long-winded answer of saying that's on the table. We just need some more data and some more experience with them more than just 2 days a week.
Okay. And any kind of update on class coverages or whatever was going on that I got so many teachers and parents saying, what's going on?
Yeah, we heard a little bit about it today. We heard a parent make a comment that, when we're short on subs, their special education services may not always be provided. I had a conversation today with the high school principal. He's looking at, trying to find creative ways of covering staff. We're going to have some more staff absences tomorrow and Friday because those are the days that our staff has been that have not been vaccinated, that they're eligible for the vaccine. We have a slot of appointments throughout the day tomorrow and Friday. So, I don't know that we have an answer for you because we talked at length about this last time. We're in an era of high demand for qualified, certified, let alone qualified people. And we have high absenteeism this year because if you don't feel well, stay home. And that we know that there's a trickle down effect. And I think the high school has always tried to handle staff absenteeism by giving kids some independence and being able to work in the cafeteria or in the library. And that's still the goal, but we are short staffed, especially in an era where we have more absenteeism.
The good news is that with the new regulations and more people being vaccinated, we've noticed that less staff than now need to be quarantined. So it's slow, but the more our staff are vaccinated, in those circumstances, the more our staff can be in the buildings. So that's an improvement. It doesn't solve the shortage of teachers in general, but it does solve the problem of staff getting quarantined and caught up in quarantine.
If you're filled with your vaccine, you don't have to quarantine.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, any other board comments, new business? All right, then can I have a motion to end the meeting, please?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So for the public, we will be meeting again next Wednesday, March 17th. We will be doing our instructional budgetary presentation, amongst other things. I'm sure we'll be talking about Princeton Plan again. So join us then. Okay, thanks. Bye.